Am I the asshole for telling my grandfather my family treated me as an outsider at Thanksgiving, causing him to cut off their financial support? On Thanksgiving morning, as I awoke in my Chicago apartment, the customary fear crept into my heart. Another year brings another family reunion. This year's event took place at the Breakers, a premium resort hotel in Palm Beach, Florida. It was our yearly family trip, and my grandfather covered all expenses. I sighed deeply as I finished checking my suitcase. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I'm Helen Walker, a 33-year-old research director at a pharmaceutical business making $160,000 per year and living alone in Chicago. I've progressively increased my assets through diligent investing. Money is necessary, but dignity is far more valuable. My grandfather's words rang through my thoughts. He is a great businessman who built his money on building. He taught me everything I know about financial management. He has been enthusiastically teaching me about investing and asset management since I was a child. He's the only one in the family who fully understands me. In stark contrast is my sister Catherine, a former flight attendant who is now a full-time housewife. She appears to be well off, living with her husband and 7-year-old kid. However, this lifestyle would be impossible to maintain without our grandfather's monthly support. Their hefty mortgage payments, auto loans, and daughter's private school tuition are all covered by grandfather's assistance. Catherine's social media feed is still loaded with gorgeous images about new designer bags, costly dinners, and luxurious vacations. She seemed obsessed with depicting a lifestyle that is distant from reality. My parents are similar. George and Margaret look to be living a pleasant retirement in Florida, but that too would be unsustainable without grandfather's assistance. Their retirement fund planning, the deposit for the posh retirement home, it all rests on grandfather. My parents have always been chilly to me yet indulgent to my sister. That has not altered since childhood. During my undergraduate years, I used scholarships to pay for my tuition and worked part-time to supplement my income. Meanwhile, my sister relied solely on our parents for everything, from studies abroad to living expenses. The disparity is a terrible memory. Another of grandfather's sayings was, "Become someone who can stand on their own 2 feet." I lived by those principles, studying and worked tirelessly to achieve independence. I made a profession in the pharmaceutical sector, increased my assets through investments, and created a life that does not require anyone's assistance. My own hard work paid for the high-rise flat with a view of Chicago's cityscape. Moderate luxury within my means is the lifestyle I've chosen. As I lifted my bag, my uneasiness about this year's Thanksgiving increased. Every year, our family's warped relationships worsen. My sister's competition for appearances, our parents' prejudiced adoration, and grandfather's concerned expression. In the taxi to the airport, I thought about this year's trip. The Breakers, a prominent 5-star hotel founded in 1896, features Italian Renaissance architecture and magnificent suites costing more than $800 per night. The Thanksgiving special supper was estimated to cost $200 per person. Despite the opulent surroundings, our family's reality was weak and skewed. My sister's lavish lifestyle and our parents' comfortable retirement were all castles constructed on the sand of grandfather's approval. This year, those misconceptions were about to hit their limit. Everyone must have observed, but no one dared to speak about the truth that awaited us. On Thanksgiving Day, Florida's warm sunlight streamed through the taxi window from Palm Beach International Airport to the Breakers. I arrived at the luxury resort in good weather. I was the last to arrive. I strolled inside the gorgeous Italian Renaissance-style edifice, carrying my navy Rimowa luggage. My basic yet lovely theory dress had wrinkled somewhat from the lengthy travel. The lobby extended out into a neat, respectable area. Luxurious chandeliers gleamed above, as footsteps echoed silently on the marble floor below. Other visitors had already begun to enjoy their Thanksgiving afternoon in their own unique ways. On my way to the front desk, I saw my folks. They appeared to be discussing something in a quiet corner of the foyer. Mother wore what appeared to be a new resort dress, while father dressed casually and appropriately for his age. They averted their gaze as soon as our eyes met. "Miss Walker, I apologize, but I cannot find your reservation," the front desk staff replied sheepishly. They continued examining the screen, unable to conceal their astonishment. "I can see the reservations for your family members, but..." At that point, the sound of expensive heels approached. I turned to find Catherine approaching us with a proud look, a Hermès Birkin bag on her arm, and a Cartier watch shining. "Oh, Helen finally made it," her voice was deliberately sarcastic. As other customers focused their attention on us, the front desk workers proceeded to examine the system. "How strange that there's no reservation," Catherine continued, her voice rising in volume, evidently intended to attract attention. Her Louis Vuitton suitcase stood out in comparison to my blue case. Actually, Catherine drew closer with a triumphant smile. I only made reservations for our family. Her words resonated around the foyer. A room for me, my husband, and daughter, and one for mom and dad. Just for the real family, you see. A minute of quiet occurred. The front desk personnel were speechless, and our parents turned away even farther. The air around me seemed frozen. I took a slow, deep breath and said without changing my expression, "I see. Then I'll leave." My voice came out more calmly than I expected. I adjusted my grasp on the suitcase handle and pleasantly nodded to the front desk workers. I took out my smartphone and launched the taxi-hailing app. "Wait," Catherine's voice increased slightly, but I was already about to exit the foyer. Feeling the front desk staff's sympathetic look, I began strolling toward the entrance. My sister, despite being caught off guard by this unexpected event, maintained a triumphant grin. Our parents stood uncomfortable and frozen in place. Only my footsteps resonated through the hushed lobby. The afternoon sunshine coming through the main door seemed unusually bright. While waiting for the taxi, the palm trees swung in the gentle breeze. The Thanksgiving weekend I had planned to spend at this luxurious resort had come to an end in a matter of minutes. However, in this moment, a peculiar sense of release washed over my emotions. Grandfather's words resurfaced. Become someone who can stand on their own 2 feet. I felt like I now understood what he meant. During the few minutes I waited for the taxi, I looked at the hotel's stunning facade. The Adam-style architecture recounted the story of nearly a century of history. Luxury cars decorated lavishly for Thanksgiving continued to arrive, accompanied by well-dressed families. Through the lobby glass, I could see my niece, Amy, in a costly dress that was inappropriate for a 7-year-old. She was fidgeting behind her mother, possibly searching for me. Every Thanksgiving, it was my tradition to bring her a gift. This year, I had prepared a pearl hair clip, which was still well wrapped in my suitcase. As I entered the waiting taxi, I informed the driver, Palm Beach International Airport. On my smartphone, I was already looking for the next available flight to Chicago. Though airfares were high during Thanksgiving, this did not concern me at all. Rather, the emotional energy I'd squandered each year over this season appeared far more costly. The Breakers building appeared smaller in the rearview mirror. Its form, glistening in the afternoon sun, seemed to represent our family's apparent glamour. And suddenly the first break had emerged in the facade. I had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain, there was no going back. The taxis inside created a peaceful environment away from the outside noise. The air conditioning maintained a pleasant chill, and the luxury leather chairs gradually relieved the stress from earlier. Outside the window, Palm Beach's characteristic resort panorama flowed past, with neatly aligned palm trees, white luxury mansions, and occasional glimpses of the Atlantic's shimmering surface. Views that would typically captivate me seemed curiously distant. I pulled out my smartphone and dialed my grandfather's number without hesitation. The ringtone appeared to last longer than normal before he eventually responded. "Helen, what is wrong?" Grandfather's voice maintained its customary calm. "I have something to report," I said, speaking in a straightforward manner. I described the events at the hotel without emotion, just the facts. The missed reservation, Catherine's words, and how I left. I described everything chronologically. On the other end of the telephone, I could hear grandfather's breathing becoming slightly rougher. He was definitely able to contain his rage. However, I added no words of condolence. "I understand. I'll handle this from here," said grandfather, his voice low and husky. In those simple remarks was a foreshadowing of what was to come. Shortly after hanging up, incoming calls began to come in. First, Catherine reported over 10 missed calls in 15 minutes. "Helen, Amy wants to see you. She was looking forward to our yearly Thanksgiving. Can't you consider a child's feelings?" Her text continued. "My friends are coming to dinner tonight. I had planned to share a great family Thanksgiving photo on Instagram. Do you understand how uncomfortable this scenario is?" Catherine's voice became increasingly frantic. Between these calls, we started receiving emails from our parents. "We could have created another room," Mother wrote, "but as Catherine mentioned, we prioritize our genuine family. Are you independent now?" Father's email was even more inhumane. "Catherine has a family, a husband and a child. You understand, correct? Can't you just put up with it for Thanksgiving?" The following email contained spiteful calculations. "That's always been your problem, only thinking about yourself, never considering the family." Mother continued, her tone making me appear like the villain. "We had everything scheduled for social media updates. We were meant to take beautiful photographs of you and Amy. Everything is ruined now." My chest clenched as I read each message. But these were phrases I should be used to by now. My sister and I have been subjected to this type of bigotry since we were children. As the taxi approached the airport, a new wave of messages flooded in. Amy is crying because you are selfish. She had been waiting so long to see her aunt, Catherine wrote, still using her daughter as a shield. Behind her words, I simply saw vanity and pride. Mother sent additional sarcastic emails. Poor Catherine. If you understood how concerned she is about Amy's future, you'd understand. However, children's education requires money. However, at this moment, I felt no need to respond. If anything, I was relieved that they had displayed such obvious real colors. Just before we arrived at the airport, grandfather sent us an email. I am proud of your decision. I understand everything. When I heard those words, my eyes welled up with quiet resolve rather than despair. It represented the start of a new chapter. My smartphone continued to get repeated calls. Anxious messages from Catherine demanding, answer the phone right away. Accusatory emails from my parents alleged, your selfishness is tearing the family apart. However, I had already reached a point where no one's voice could reach me. I got out of the taxi and started heading toward the international terminal. While purchasing my travel to Chicago, I had a peculiar feeling of emancipation. This was the moment of liberation from the bogus, real family. About 30 minutes after boarding the plane heading for Chicago, grandfather sent a new email. All family members were among the awardees. The following is my final decision to be announced. Grandfather began the email in his usual dignified tone. On Thanksgiving, an incident occurred that severely harmed our family's dignity. The callous treatment of Helen is an insult to the Walker family name and cannot be permitted under any circumstances. I am immediately freezing all financial support for George, Margaret and Catherine. I must remind you that your opulent lifestyles are completely dependent on my assistance. Those who have lost sight of family's essence, wallowing in vanity and pretense, are no longer eligible for such privilege. Just as I finished reading, calls from my sister started rolling in. Her worry was clear from the frequency of incoming calls. Helen, please answer the phone. Convince Grandpa, she said. Messages left on voicemail documented my sister's panicked voice. It was obvious that her life would become untenable without the monthly payments. All of her living expenses were based on grandfather's monthly support of $30,000. Emails from our parents also poured in. Their earlier arrogance vanished, replaced by pathetic pleading. Helen, this is about our retirement. Could you please talk to your grandfather again? The $150,000 deposit for their booked luxury retirement home would be forfeited, and their medical insurance benefits would be discontinued. Our parents appeared to be panicked by the prospect of their retirement security crumbling in an instant. Do something, he'll listen if it's you, won't he? Mother's email included unusual words of remorse. I'm sorry for saying such terrible things earlier, but this is a family crisis. I silently turned off my smartphone. A large sea of clouds stretched outside the window. The beautiful family Thanksgiving images that had been shared on social media year after year would not be uploaded this year. Catherine may suffer a greater blow than the financial consequences. The jet was flying steadily into Chicago with no turbulence. The individual next to me appeared to be planning Thanksgiving dinner, reviewing recipes on their smartphone. Normally, at this point, I would have been in the hotel lounge giving Amy her present. When I arrived in Chicago and connected to my house Wi-Fi, I saw over 100 unread messages. Most were from my sister, and their content became increasingly frenzied. What am I supposed to do? I won't be able to pay the loans. What about Amy's school fees? Emails from our parents had also become extremely serious. We might not be able to get the retirement home deposit back. What are we supposed to do now? I can't sleep at night thinking about the medical insurance. However, what grabbed the most attention was grandfather's final notice, which was distributed to all family members. This measure is irreversible. Consider it the consequence of your own actions. Any objection to my decision will result in the termination of all remaining support. I calmly read the incoming mails. Their previously disdainful demeanor had entirely turned into desperate appeals. Never before has each family member's genuine nature been displayed so vividly. I set down my smartphone and brewed tea in the kitchen. By now, I should have been enjoying the hotel's sumptuous dinner, a $200 Thanksgiving special course per person. Remembering that sum made me smile somewhat. Every year, my sister's family would post about this opulent supper on social media, despite the fact that they were struggling to make monthly credit card payments. A second call arrived, this time from my sister's husband. Words condemning his wife's spending habits were mixed in with the panic and perplexity. It appeared that fissures were forming in their marriage as well. Our parents sent more detailed pleas. The retirement home won't refund the $150,000 advance payment. Medical insurance will be self-paid from next month. Because of you, our retirement. Following those statements, he repeatedly defended my sister and criticized me. It was as if they had learned nothing. I pulled a lemon out of the refrigerator and put it in my tea. Tomorrow, I will go back to work as usual. The pharmaceutical company's initiative anticipated further study of data analysis. A $160,000 annual salary and steadily accumulating investment trusts, a solid life foundation developed via my own labor. The night panorama of Chicago from outside the window gleamed silently. The lights of the high-rise buildings resemble stars. Suddenly, I remembered my credit card statement. Full payment every month, moderate luxury within my means, and no debt. Grandfather's favorite saying came back to me. Vanity is for others. Savings are for yourself. In this city, I had carved myself my own path. As grandfather mentioned, I had matured into a self-sufficient individual. And now I was convinced that I had made the proper decision. Incoming calls continued to ring on my smartphone, but the voices were no longer audible to me. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, in early December, Chicago had its first snowfall. Days were spent absorbed in new initiatives at the pharmaceutical company's lab. Despite the monotony of the everyday routine, my family's condition has changed dramatically. The alterations were initially visible on social media. My sister's Instagram, which had been updated virtually every day, had suddenly gone silent. Her most recent image, from the day before Thanksgiving, was a shot of her Hermes purse at an exclusive restaurant, along with the hashtag dream lifestyle. The compliments, "What a wonderful life," now appeared terribly sarcastic. Father's emails eventually expressed genuine regret. "I'm reflecting on our years of extravagant living. We spoiled Catherine too much, and we were cold to you. I'm sorry." Similar messages arrived from mother. With their medical insurance subsidies removed, they were suddenly aware of the true expense of healthcare. Our pension alone is nowhere near enough. I finally understood how luxurious we were living. Catherine's position was far more severe. I got an unexpected call from her spouse. "I've discovered hidden debts she kept secret. I'm shocked by the credit card bills. We can't maintain this lifestyle anymore." With grandfather's backing abruptly withdrawn, their opulent facade crumbled. "We're considering moving to a cheaper house, looking at public schools for Amy too," according to him. His voice was filled with tiredness and resignation. "Catherine cries every night." Their marriage itself appeared to be in peril. In comparison, my life has stayed quiet. I arrived at work at 8 a.m. He returned home at 6 p.m. Weekends were spent attending financial study groups, revising my saving strategies, and living within my means. I was just elevated to team leader for a new research project. My pay is likely to improve steadily. Investment trust activities are progressing smoothly, with no concerns for the future. Grandfather's words resonated in my mind. Vanity brings momentary satisfaction, savings bring lifelong peace of mind. The weight of grandfather's comments was now felt strongly by the entire family. While my parents were concerned about retirement and security, and my sister was struggling with debt payback, I was simply living my normal life. Over the last 2 weeks, the number of emails and phone calls has substantially decreased. The urgent contacts that arrived daily during the first few days have reduced to once or twice a week. Their content, too, was rapidly turning towards resignation. Amy will be transferring to public school. She'll take the school bus. My sister's most recent email demonstrated symptoms of embracing reality. The idyllic private school existence she had shared on social media would never be seen again. Our parents were also thinking about moving from their luxury Florida neighborhood to a cheap condominium since they were having trouble paying their medical bills. Their fantasy of a comfortable retirement had fallen quickly. "We've been living with wrong values for years." That was written in Father's most recent email. It was unclear whether this awareness would serve as a catalyst for the restoration of actual family relationships. Last week, I received a simple email from grandfather. "Awakening to the truth of life sometimes brings pain, but it's necessary pain. Your decision gave them an important lesson." I didn't respond. I quietly saved the email. New stars twinkled in the cold sky over Chicago. 3 months after Thanksgiving, early indications of spring began to surface in Chicago. My life had not altered, rather, it had gotten more meaningful. The new project at the pharmaceutical company was going well, and last week I received word of another promotion. My achievements as research director were recognized, and my compensation was raised to $200,000. Investment trust activities were likewise performing well, with assets increasing steadily. From my office window, I could view the wide surface of Lake Michigan. The waves sparkled in the spring sunlight, conveying a peaceful hope. New research data was piling up on my desk. My most valuable time was spent working. Grandfather recently sent me a simple pearl necklace for my birthday. The attached card contained a single phrase in his usual, exquisite handwriting. True brilliance dwells in those who stand on their own feet. I'd started having little touch with my folks. They'd relocated from their upscale Florida community to a more inexpensive condominium. Despite their struggles with medical bill payments, they appeared to be gradually adjusting to reality. Luxury brings momentary joy, but there's genuine security in a grounded lifestyle. Mother wrote in an email showing genuine understanding for the first time. My sister's family had relocated to a typical suburban neighborhood. Amy had started attending public school and was becoming accustomed to riding the school bus. Catherine's social media accounts remained inactive. How empty it all seems now, posting just to keep up appearances, she stated in an unusual email. Days spent struggling with credit card payments tested their marriage, but they were no longer avoiding reality. I had started setting new ambitions. I intended to achieve more in pharmaceutical research and eventually run my own research team. I hoped to share my knowledge and experience with young scholars. During the holidays, I attended finance and economics study groups. The individuals I met there lived strong, practical lives. The real chats, devoid of pretension and ego, were refreshing. The Thanksgiving incident taught each family member valuable lessons, including the value of financial independence, the futility of a pretentious lifestyle, and, most importantly, the true definition of family. Grandfather's final words lingered in my heart. Real bonds can only be born after overcoming hardship. In my desk drawer, the pearl hair clip I had prepared as Amy's gift was still nicely wrapped. Perhaps someday, when she discovers actual value, when she appreciates the importance of standing on her own 2 feet rather than counting social media likes, this clip will be appropriate to show her. Outside the window, early spring winds rustled through the street trees, signaling the start of a new season. I ended my engagement to my fiancée. After she wanted a break to explore her ex, I sold our house and disappeared. Hello everyone. After what feels like an eternity, I, 27 million, decided it was time to discuss what has been going on with me recently. Here's the thing. Until lately, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, Tessa, 26F. We'd been together for 4 years, and for the most part, I thought we were solid. But now I'm sitting here, wondering why I didn't see this coming sooner. Tessa and I met at a birthday celebration, introduced by a mutual friend. She was humorous, confident, and had a no-nonsense approach that I enjoyed. I'd dated previously, but no one connected with me as she did. We hit it off quickly and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, as if we were all on the same page about professions, marriage, and eventually creating a family. She was a freelance graphic designer, and I worked as a project manager for a technology business, so our schedules were very similar. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was enjoyable. We had been discussing getting married for a time, but it wasn't until last year that I proposed. Nothing fancy, just a simple supper at home for the two of us. Tessa seems thrilled. She cried, hugged me, and agreed. That night, we began to envision our future. A fall wedding, a limited guest list, and this charming little site by the lake. It seemed like everything was falling into place, or so I thought. The initial red flags were little and evident. They were little sneaky flaws that I ignored because I didn't want to overthink. For example, Tessa's enthusiasm for wedding preparation faded after a few months. She was all in at first, sending me Pinterest boards, searching through wedding outfits, and asking about small details like whether I preferred tulips or roses for the centerpieces. But suddenly it simply stopped. I'd ask her questions like, "Hey, have you chosen your bridesmaids yet?" And she'd shrug it aside. "Not yet, I'm still thinking about it," she said again. The same thing happened with her clothing, cake, and music. Every decision we'd been so enthused about had become something she wanted to postpone. "There's still time," she'd say. The wedding seemed like an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Plus, Tessa had a lot going on at work. I assumed she'd snap out of it eventually. What I didn't realize was that her lack of enthusiasm wasn't about the wedding, but about us. The true slap in the face happened one night while we were out with some friends. Someone brought up the dumb TikTok game, which you've probably seen. It's the one where you have to answer personal questions while keeping a straight face and not passing judgment. Everything was going well until someone said, "If you could relive one relationship, which would it be?" Without thinking, Tessa responded, "Oh, probably Dylan." Just like that. Dylan. Her college ex. The person who cheated on her. The moment she uttered that, the room became awkwardly quiet. She giggled awkwardly and attempted to backtrack, saying, not that I'd want to. It's just a significant element of my past. I wanted to confront her right there, but we were among friends, so I let it go. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about it. What was it about Dylan? Why would you choose to revisit that relationship? She simply shrugged it off as if it were no big thing. It was a stupid game, Liam. Don't take it so seriously. She grinned and shifted the subject. I didn't press it because, honestly, I didn't want to start a battle over something that could have been minor. But, deep down, it stayed with me. Following that, her behavior became more difficult to ignore. She was using her phone more frequently, going through her texts with a cheeky little smile. She began creating vague explanations for why she couldn't hang out or why she would cancel plans at the last minute. "Oh, sorry, I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight," she'd typically remark. Or it may be, "I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend." The justifications were not particularly suspicious, but they were stacking up. It seemed like I had become less of a priority. Then came Friday night, which changed everything. I arrived home from work early, excited to spend the evening with Tessa. I was hoping we might order in and binge watch something, a quiet night. When I came in, however, the atmosphere seemed odd. She was seated on the couch, holding her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was staring at the screen, absolutely unfocused. "Hey, I'm home," I murmured, hoping to relieve the tension. "You're early," she said, as if it were a negative thing. I shrugged it off and went into the kitchen to begin preparing dinner, but the silence in the house was oppressive. Usually, she'd ask how my day was or tell me about her own. What about tonight? Nothing. Finally, I looked around and asked, "Is everything okay?" She shut her laptop and glanced at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." And my stomach sank. You know how you feel when you know something horrible is going to happen but you can't stop it? That was me, standing there like an idiot with a spatula in one hand. I approached and sat across from her. "All right," I said. "What is going on?" She paused, as if she were trying to find the proper words. She just came out with it. "I've been thinking about us." "And about Dylan?" I swear that I almost laughed. "Dylan, are you serious? What about him?" She bit her lip and avoided my gaze. "I suppose I need some time to consider things through. I'd like to take a break and see whether there's still something there with him." I couldn't believe what I heard. "Do you want to take a break and date your ex? Are you out of your mind, Tessa? We've got engaged." "It's not like that," she responded hurriedly, as if she could smooth things up. "I just want to know if I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I pledge to come back." That's when I discovered how deep her chutzpah was. She assumed I would sit around and wait for her to decide whether I was good enough. Something inside me moved at that very instant. I did not yell or blow up. I just sat there staring at her, wondering how the hell I hadn't seen this coming. I wasn't sure how to answer at first. My fiancée recently informed me that she wants to take a break to explore things with her ex, Dylan. What can you say to that? Finally, I asked. "So, what does this break mean to you?" My voice came out more calmer than I felt. She straightened up slightly, as if she had been ready for this conversation. "I believe we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if my feelings for Dylan are genuine, and you are welcome to ponder on us as well." I couldn't believe the audacity. "Wait," I replied, leaning forward. "You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to reflect on us? What kind of backwards logic is that?" Tessa sighed, as if I were the one acting unreasonable. "It's not about you doing something wrong, Liam. This is about me figuring out what I need." She seemed to have practiced this. The way she spoke, the way she avoided eye contact, it was as if she had already decided this was going to happen and simply wanted me to accept it. "You know this sounds insane, right?" I muttered. "You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play what if with some guy who treats you like garbage." Her face tightened, and for the first time, I realized how stubborn she could be. "I'm not asking for permission, Liam. I'm telling you what I need." That one landed differently. I wasn't just sad anymore, I was angry. I stood up and began pacing, hoping to calm myself down. "So what, Tessa? You're just going to pack a bag and head over to Dylan's place? Is that your big plan?" "No," she insisted. "It's not like that. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before we move forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the right decision." "You owe it to yourself?" I asked, laughing cruelly. "And what about what you owe me?" "We're engaged, Tessa. We're supposed to be building a life together, And now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough? I never said you weren't good enough, she replied, her voice rising. But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain. And right now I'm not. That was it. She wasn't simply interested in exploring things with Dylan, she was also unsure about me. Even after 4 years together and all of our plans, she was still unsure. It struck me all at once. She hadn't realized how painful and stupid her plea was. She believed this was reasonable, that I'd just sit there while she figured out whatever foolishness was going through her head. I stopped pacing and glanced at her, really stared at her. You know what? Sure, I responded, my tone bland. Take your break. She blinked, surprised by how quickly I agreed. Liam, I'm not trying to hurt you. I need space to figure things out. I nodded and kept my expression bland. All right. If that's what you need. She paused, as if she expected me to argue or fight for her. When I didn't, she stood up, took out her laptop, and murmured, I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time. Okay, I replied simply. She looked at me, wondering how to answer, and then disappeared into the bedroom. I could hear her moving around and throwing items into a bag. I remained calm on the couch, but my mind was already turning. If she really wants a break, that's okay. Let her have it. Several minutes later, I heard the front door close. She was gone, perhaps believing she had abandoned me here to wait and worry. She had no idea I was not going to sit around and do nothing. She could have her fantasy, but I had other ideas now. I'll provide an update once I've set some things in motion. This is not going to end the way she expects it to. Update 1. Thank you for your feedback and suggestions on my last post. A lot has happened this week, and I'd like to report how things are going. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone in this community for their wonderful support. Many of you mentioned that I don't just sit around waiting, and you were correct. I've been busy putting everything into motion. First, I called my pal Noah. He's been my best friend since college, and he's not the type of man to sugarcoat things. After hearing the full story, he brought over pizza, and we spent the entire night scheming. Dude, you realize she's going to try to crawl back once things don't work out with Dylan, right? Noah reminded him. He was correct, of course. The more we talked, the more obvious it became that I needed to be proactive. This was not about vengeance, it was about regaining control of my life. I began with the house. Tessa doesn't seem to recall that it's entirely in my name. She loves to act as if it's our home, always talking about the curtains and paint colors she chose, yet I'm the one who pays the mortgage. I phoned a realtor first thing Monday morning. The realtor came by to see the property, and we decided to list it right away. The market in our neighborhood is now hot, and we already have several potential purchasers. Tessa has no idea. She probably believes I'm sitting here in our shared home, waiting for her to sort out her feelings. The next step was to gradually remove her from my life. You remember the Live Laugh Love placards she insisted on putting up? Gone. Did she have to have those beautiful throw pillows? Donated. Her clothing and personal belongings that she left behind? I carefully packaged them all up. But this is where I became strategic. Instead of just dropping her belongings off at her mother's house or having her come fetch them, I hired a moving company. They took everything to her mother's house and left a short note. Here's your stuff. Good luck with Dylan. I know some of you may think this is petty, but I disagree. I'm not being vengeful, I'm being efficient. She wanted some room to think things through? Well, she's got it, literally. The most fascinating moment came when mutual friends began asking questions. Instead of playing the victim or slandering her, I simply stated the truth. Tessa decided she needed to explore things with her ex before committing to marriage. I decided I deserve better than being someone's backup plan. You should watch how people respond to that. No drama, no accusations, just facts. It's amazing how rapidly the story changes when you don't try to control it. I've also been making moves at work. I applied for a position at our West Coast office that I'd been considering for a long time. If the house sells, which seems quite likely, and I get this job, I'll be starting over on the other side of the country. Tessa has attempted to contact me several times this week, first with light-hearted texts like, "Hope you're doing okay," and progressing to progressively concerned messages when she learned I was actually making changes rather than simply waiting around. Yesterday, she was in a panic when her mother informed her that the boxes had been delivered. "What are you doing? Why are you acting like this is over?" I kept my response simple. "Because it is over, Tessa. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She began crying, claiming that she simply wanted time to figure things out, that I was being quick, and that this was not what she meant when she asked for a break. What did you expect? I questioned her. That I'd sit here like a faithful puppy while you test drove your ex? That's not how this works. But what if I realize you're the one I want? She was weeping. Then you'll have learned a valuable lesson about not taking people for granted, I said before hanging up the phone. The weird thing is that I'm no longer upset. Instead, I feel liberated. Every box I pack, every move I make feels like I'm reclaiming parts of myself that I didn't realize I'd given up. Noah came by again yesterday to assist me with packing the house. He also saw the change in me. You seem different, he observed. More focused? He's correct. I'm different. When Tessa first revealed her desire to pursue things with Dylan, I felt like my world was falling. Now I see it wasn't my world collapsing, but rather the false reality I'd been living in finally disintegrating. I have more things in the works, but I will hold them for the next update. For the time being, I'll simply say this. Sometimes the greatest way to respond to someone treating you as an option is to completely remove yourself from their list of options. Stay tuned. This narrative hasn't ended yet, and I have a feeling Tessa is finding that her break to straighten things out isn't going to go nearly as planned. Update 2. I appreciate all of the feedback on my recent update. Things have escalated significantly, and I'd like to tell you how the situation has evolved. Remember how I mentioned applying for the West Coast position? Okay, I got it. The timing could not be better. The house is under contract, and the closing is slated for next month. But that's only the beginning. What's particularly interesting is how Tessa's Dylan exploration is unfolding. Through mutual connections, I discovered that their restored passion isn't quite the fairy tale she envisioned. Apparently, 4 years haven't changed him much. He's still the untrustworthy guy who cheated on her in college. But here's when it gets good. Tessa has attempted to control the narrative on social media. She has been sharing vague, inspiring phrases about finding yourself and following your heart. So I decided to play the same game, but with a twist. I created a single factual post. Update on my life. Excited to announce I've accepted a position in San Francisco. Sometimes when one door closes, better ones open. Looking forward to this new chapter. The comments and texts began pouring in. People congratulated me, inquired about the relocation, and, of course, wondered about Tessa. I kept my answers basic and honest. We're no longer together. She wanted to explore other options, so I'm exploring mine too. This set off a fantastic chain reaction in our social circle. Remember those friends who weren't sure about the situation? Watching me handle this with grace as Tessa shares cryptic relationship quotations completely changed the atmosphere. Then came the professional consequences. Tessa's freelance design employment is primarily based on recommendations and networking. Sarah, 29F, a mutual contact in the computer field who used to refer many clients to Tessa, contacted me. I need to know what happened, Sarah explained over coffee. Tessa's telling people you're having a temporary separation to grow individually, but something feels off. I shared Sarah Tessa's note about wanting to date Dylan. Sarah's look said it all. She did not believe it. By the end of the week, numerous potential clients had pushed back their projects with Tessa, not because I said anything nasty, but because, honestly, who wants to work with someone who takes commitment so lightly? Tessa sensed the shift. Her texts become more frequent and frantic. Why are you telling people about Dylan? You're ruining my reputation. This isn't fair, I just needed time to think. I answered to the last one. You got what you wanted, time and space, how I spend mine is no longer your concern. Then came the turning point. Dylan, in his wonderful wisdom, shared a photo of them together at the restaurant where Tessa and I had our first date. It was evident she was attempting to recreate our history with him. It was both sad and funny. The post didn't last long, but the damage was done. Our friends witnessed it, and the remaining few individuals who supported Tessa's finding myself story lost respect for her. Even her own sister contacted me. I'm so sorry about how she's handling this. You deserve better. What is the most satisfying part? I didn't have to be vengeful. I simply lived my life freely and honestly, whereas Tessa attempted to play both sides. The truth has a way of emerging. She visited my office yesterday. Dylan seemed to have already revealed his true colors, flirting with other women, being untrustworthy, a familiar story. She was crying. I made a huge mistake, she cried. I was scared of commitment. I thought I needed to know if there was something better out there, but I was wrong. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I simply gazed at her calmly. No, Tessa. The best thing that ever happened to me was you showing your true colors before we got married. She attempted to argue, claiming that we could fix this, that she would go to counseling, and that she would prove she could be trusted again. I simply shook my head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about Dylan anymore. This is about you thinking you could keep me as a backup while you explore your options. That's not love, that's convenience. She left my office distraught, but I felt better than ever. The house closes next week, the majority of my belongings are packed, and my new life in San Francisco begins in a month. The funny thing is that some folks think I'm being overly tough. Everyone makes mistakes, they explain. However, this was not a mistake, it was a choice. There are actually several options available. Each time she texted Dylan. Every time, she lied about where she was. She spent every second planning to put our romance on hold. These were all options. I'll provide another update once the move is complete. For the time being, I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but rather getting better. And this is exactly what I'm doing. Next update. Update 3. Thank you for following my journey. This will be my final update, and I have some interesting developments to report. San Francisco is everything I imagined it would be. My new apartment has a stunning view of the bay, and the tech scene here is fantastic. My new office team is fantastic. It's refreshing to be around people who prioritize growth and innovation over drama. But first, let me catch you up on how things ended back home. The closing went smoothly, and the house actually sold for more than the asking price. It was interesting to see Tessa's reaction after finding out through mutual friends. She didn't believe I'd sold the house until she drove by and saw the new owners move in. Here's where it got really interesting. Remember Dylan? He reached out to me, of all people. He sent me a long message about how he never meant to cause problems and that Tessa had contacted him first, months before she requested the break. Tessa had been planning her little exploration for quite some time. She had been messaging Dylan for months, carefully laying the groundwork for her backup strategy. What's with the irony? Dylan ended their relationship because, as he put it, if she could do this to you, she could do it to anyone. Tessa's professional fallout has been significant. Remember all the clients she'd lined up? Most of them discovered other designers, not because I said anything, but because word spreads in the industry. One of her largest clients really contacted me. We heard what happened with the engagement, they told us. We're looking for someone who can commit to long-term projects. Do you know any reliable designers? I recommended a talented acquaintance of mine, and she received the contract. Karma, I suppose. Tessa's social media meltdown has been something to see. Then came the sorrowful quotations about losing your sweetheart, followed by angry posts about toxic people who can't handle growth. Finally, she made urgent attempts to show everyone how delighted she was. The final one was quite interesting. She wrote about beginning her own design firm. 3 days later, she began sending out job applications. Last week, her sister contacted me again. Tessa has apparently been staying with their parents, stating she needs time to heal from our separation. Her sister's exact words were, "She really thought you'd wait for her. When you sold the house and moved, it broke her fantasy completely." The most reassuring moment occurred during a video call with our old friend group. They were telling me about local gossip, and someone described seeing Tessa at a coffee shop, explaining to a potential customer why her portfolio website was down. Apparently, she forgot that I was the one who set it up and maintained it. She couldn't figure out how to restore her hosting membership when it expired. Not my concern anymore. My new life here is coming together well. I've joined a local rock climbing club, begun taking Spanish lessons, and even adopted a dog from a local shelter. His name is Zeus, and he's a greater companion than my ex-fiancée. The tech community here is really inviting. Last week, I was invited to speak at a developer conference, which would not have happened if I had stayed at home. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not dragging dead weight. I had one last interaction with Tessa. She sent me an email requesting some old images from our shared cloud storage. I had previously downloaded what I wanted and terminated the account several weeks ago. Her email stated, "I know you're trying to erase me from your life, but you can't just delete our memories. Those 4 years meant something." My reply was simple. "You're right. Those years taught me what I don't want in a partner. Thanks for the lesson." Some mutual acquaintances believe I am being very harsh and should be more understanding of her moment of confusion. However, that wasn't a moment. It was a calculated decision to keep me as a safety net while she pursued what she believed to be a better option. What is the most important thing I've learned from all of this? Sometimes the worst things that happen to you result in the best outcomes. If Tessa hadn't shown her true colors, I could have married her, only to learn her genuine personality years later, possibly with children in the mix. Instead, I'm in a lovely city with a wonderful job, making new friends, and feeling optimistic about the future. The anguish of betrayal has been replaced by thankfulness for the gunshot avoided. Thank you to everyone who has followed the story and offered advice. Your encouragement helped me remain strong when I might have faltered. And for anyone going through a similar situation, know this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait around for them to alter their mind about you. Life is too short to be someone's backup plan. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and make things better for yourself. That's it for now, guys. This chapter of my life has officially ended, and I couldn't be more excited for the next one to begin. Take care, and thank you for everything. My brother secretly had a crush on my wife and even brought my ex to our wedding to ruin it, so I told his pregnant girlfriend he was cheating on her. Please be patient as this will be a lengthy read. My younger brother, Jake, false name, is 25 years old and I am 27. As siblings, Jake and I have always been close, and I assumed our connection was quite typical. Perhaps I didn't realize what was happening. Or perhaps he was really skilled at concealing his actual feelings. My now wife Zara, 24F, and my ex-girlfriend Ruth, 27F, are also included in this story. Zara, Jake and I all attended the same school. I never really interacted with Zara because I was a few years older than them. I was acquainted with Jake and all of his pals, and we occasionally played together, but that was our only connection. Because our interests were so dissimilar, Jake and I began to drift apart by the time I was in my junior year. I didn't really push for a tight relationship with him because I assumed this was a normal part of growing up. We continued to get out from time to time, but we didn't exchange secrets. Boys don't really do that, so I wasn't too bothered by it either. The only significant aspect of this narrative is that Jake was hanging out with a few of his friends and their girlfriends, including Zara, just before I left for college. I want to clarify that nothing improper occurred before anyone calls me a weirdo or groomer for pursuing a 15-year-old. One of the children I met there inquired about my college location. Zara added that it was her ideal university when I told them, and I just said that she was more than welcome to ask for my assistance when she applied. That was it. She was the only person I interacted with at school. After that, I left for college and completely forgot about that little encounter because it didn't matter. I met Ruth in college. We clicked right away when we were classmates. I finally asked her out in my third year of college, though it took some time. We began dating after she said yes. Everything was wonderful in the beginning of the relationship. I felt like I truly understood her because we were going through comparable struggles and wished to live similar lives with one another. After graduating from college, I was able to secure a lucrative position, but Ruth was not as fortunate. We agreed to live together in order to save money, and I was more than happy to assist her. She was applying for jobs all over the place, but for some reason, she was never hired, even after she reached the interview stage. Even though I made enough money to support the two of us, it was still hard to save much because I was still in the early stages of my work, and I knew this was having a negative psychological impact on her. For more than a year, she continued to apply to various locations without success. She was devastated, and I did my best to be there for her. But shortly after, she realized that we could make ends meet with just my paycheck, so she gave up completely. At first, I welcomed the shift because I assumed she was simply worn out from applying and being turned down and that it was having a negative psychological impact on her. She followed my advice to take some time off and engage in enjoyable activities. For 3 or 4 months, this continued. She stopped complaining as much, became happier, experienced less stress, and her mental health significantly improved. I felt pleased for her. In the next few weeks, I hoped to gently encourage her to resume her job search. When I brought up the subject a month later, she reacted negatively, claiming that the thought of going through that terrifying experience once more made her cry. She said she would begin applying when she was ready and asked me not to bring it up again. I accepted since I believed her and didn't want to put undue pressure on her or come out as unsupportive. I was promoted and given a sizable raise 2 years after I started working. Now that I could at last start saving and doing the things I loved, I was ecstatic. I've had to put a lot of my aspirations on hold for the past 2 years in order to provide for 2 people with my paycheck. Naturally, Ruth's mental health issues and my personal interests took a backseat. Now that I had some money to spend on fun, I felt relaxed. However, Ruth began pleading with me to assist in paying for her niece's schooling as soon as she learned that I had been given a raise. Ruth's brother was impoverished and could only work for a few months at a time. He had gotten a lady pregnant and was clueless about how to raise a child, particularly after the woman died and left no family behind. Ruth's brother, who was completely unprepared to care for another human being, took the infant. Ruth pleaded with me, saying that even though she had only met her niece twice, she loved her and would never be able to forgive herself if she couldn't assist her. All of this was getting to be too much for me, so I told her I would give it some thought and ended the conversation. There was a part of me that honestly considered giving her the money, but there was also a nastier part of me that believed it was her niece and that she could get up and get work to support her. That night, I drank a lot, and as I continued to drink, all the logic and reason I had suppressed came flooding back. Since I was in love with Ruth, I never really gave the suspicion that she was attempting to take advantage of me any thought. I was unable to get rid of those emotions though. I was pleased to support her throughout her life, but it seemed excessive to ask me to support her niece as soon as I received a raise, especially at the expense of my own desires. Since I would be stuck in this situation for the rest of my life if I started supporting the niece now, I knew it was time to stand up for myself. I sat Ruth down the following day and informed her that, regardless of how regrettable the situation, I would not be providing financial support for her niece. Additionally, I told her that she was free to take a job and assist the poor child if she felt sorry for her. I didn't care what she did with the money. I refused to listen to her attempt to butt in, claiming that I was being unkind and that a poor youngster needed my assistance. I also informed her that the distribution of domestic duties would shift if she failed to find employment. If she wasn't making a financial contribution, I expected her to do 80% of the tasks because we didn't have any children or pets. I informed her that I wanted a vacation after working tirelessly for the past 2 years to support her while balancing work and home. She needed to help relieve some of my financial burden if she wasn't prepared to aid me financially so that I could have more money for myself. It would be an understatement to say that she began to yell. It was a miracle I didn't leave the conversation with my ears bleeding because I don't think I've ever had the bad experience of listening to such high decibels before. She called me every possible epithet during her lengthy tirade, including misogynistic, manipulative, gaslighting, and financially abusive. I simply needed a break though. If she couldn't do this for me, why were we even partners? The altercation continued for a while. She probably thought that because I've never been confrontational, I would give in. I didn't, which surprised her. For several more days we were at a standstill. She cut me off once more when I attempted to bring up the subject. I realized we were done at that point. I was merely supporting her life and receiving nothing in return, therefore there was no future for me in this relationship. It was a messy split. Because she was unemployed, she had nowhere to go. I informed her that I was done with her and that she should have her problems straightened out by then, but I was willing to give her some money to help her get by for a month or two. She broke down in tears, accusing me of faking and performing the whole drama act. I informed her that my decision was final and that I was no longer interested in this relationship. It could not be saved, and all the solutions she was now offering ought to have been presented to her while we were still together, not as a last resort. The split was nonetheless unpleasant even though I had set her up for a few months. I didn't understand how much dead weight I'd been carrying until she walked out. I could spend so much time and effort on myself. I resumed interests I had given up while in school. These pastimes allowed me to get back in touch with Zara. Zara chose to pursue painting as a career despite not attending my college. Even though it was somewhat of a covert pastime because it wasn't deemed masculine enough, I had always loved doodling as a child. I went since I was curious about the art show in my city. I discovered Zara there. We started chatting after she displayed a piece in the exhibition. I had broken up with Ruth a few months prior to this. When I asked Zara how things were doing, we struck up a conversation that we both found enjoyable. We agreed to get together once more, and she said she would notify me of any upcoming art events in the area. She did. After we reconnected, we gradually began to fall in love. I was already deeply in love with her when I finally asked her out a year later. When I tried to ask Jake about her, he told me that they hadn't spoken since she broke up with the guy from his school friend group. I won't go into all the specifics of my relationship with Zara because they aren't pertinent to this tale, but know that we have always been friendly and equal partners, and I knew she was the person I wanted to marry from a young age. Ruth made a few attempts to contact me during this time, but I always turned her down. Zara knew this every time it occurred, and she was confident enough to trust me. A year into our relationship, Zara and I were already considering marriage when I took her to supper with my family. That has never been a problem because my parents don't meddle in their children's private matters. Zara and my family got along well, and the supper was enjoyable. We were all discussing how amusing it was that life operates in weird ways and how my run-in with Zara again was entirely coincidental. At that point, Jake joked that he was shocked that his high school infatuation would end up becoming his sister-in-law. All those in attendance interpreted it as a light-hearted joke at the moment. Zara even claimed that the only person in their group who was even remotely engaging to converse with was Jake. I didn't give Jake's remark any thought, and the dinner was enjoyable. He also appeared to be really pleased with me. Even though he had been in several relationships, I had no idea that he had been harboring affections for Zara all these years. The problems began when the wedding was being planned. At the time, I didn't see it coming since I never imagined my own brother would do something like this. At first, it was minor infractions that might be explained by his general forgetfulness, such as failing to check in with the caterer or misjudging the time of the dress appointment. I now see that he purposefully caused a wedge between Zara and me in order to somehow call off the wedding. It didn't work. Even though we were both under a lot of stress, we were too resilient to be shaken by a few missed appointments. If anything, Zara's snippiness and short fuse with Jake simply made him feel worse. The wedding day was the last straw. Ruth and I hadn't communicated all this time. To be honest, I had no idea where she was, what she was doing, or how she was doing, and I had no interest in her. I had no idea that Jake had been communicating with her for months before the wedding. If nothing else worked, he intended to get Ruth to convince or pressure me into leaving Zara. He was hoping for some sort of intervention, like drama. Despite not being on the guest list, she arrived as Jake's companion. I was taken aback by this since we expected Jake's girlfriend to be present and everyone in the family had met her. I had a horrible feeling, but I didn't have time to ask him why Ruth was there. Fortunately, Ruth had not yet caught Zara's attention. Ruth got up and began yelling in front of everyone just before Zara was set to go down the aisle. She said that she was the love of my life, that she was willing to take me back, and that I didn't have to marry Zara. There was such a ruckus that Ruth began to weep and beat her feet like a spoiled kid. In all honesty, it was pitiful. Taking Jake by the collar, I rushed over to him and yelled at him to get out. He claimed that Zara and he were destined to be together and that Ruth and I were meant to be together, and that he had come to put things right. I was horrified by the ridiculous rubbish he continued to spew. I requested that my pals take him and Ruth out of there. Zara came out at this moment, and I'm not even sure if she understood what was going on, but she strolled calmly over to Ruth, blew her a kiss, slapped her in front of everyone and requested her bridesmaids to start the music. Never in my life have I witnessed anything so legendary. Ruth found it really humiliating, and rather than causing a controversy around me, she simply made a show of herself in front of everyone. Given the situation, the remainder of the wedding proceeded as smoothly as possible. I didn't hope for such a dramatic day, but there wasn't much I could do to change the course of events at that point. Immediately following the wedding, I blocked Jake. He had shown me plenty, and I had little interest in hearing his version of events. The fact that Zara and Jake had never even truly bonded made it all the more reprehensible and nasty. To be honest, he was dangerous to be around and possessed delusions. Above everything, I felt terrible for Violet, his lover. I called Violet a few days after the wedding to find out why she didn't go and why Jake didn't invite her as a guest. Before I chose to interfere in their relationship, I needed to know what type of story he had been telling her. She told me bluntly that I didn't have to act like I liked her and that she would much rather I just be honest with her. I quickly realized that Jake had prevented Zara from attending the wedding by using either Zara or me as an excuse. She urged me to stop acting when I questioned her about it, stating that Jake had already informed her that she wasn't invited, which is why he didn't receive a guest at the wedding. She claimed that she didn't mind him leaving or that we didn't like her, but she was really offended by the fact that the whole family acted as though they liked her when we actually didn't. I firmly informed her that Jake had deceived her and that none of that was real. I pleaded with her to keep our talk private from Jake and our parents for the next 2 weeks, and that Zara and I would meet her when we got back from our honeymoon. I had to provide her a picture of the invitation that was sent to Jake, which obviously contained a +1, because she claimed she wouldn't betray Jake on our behalf. I also validated her attendance with Jake by sending her screenshots of our chats. She claimed not to believe us, so I told her that I understood and that we weren't requesting her trust, but rather that she should remain silent until we could meet and address the misunderstanding. She consented, but I wasn't sure if she would follow through on it. I was eager to expose Violet Jake's true nature, but I could only hope that everything would go smoothly during my honeymoon. Update 1. I had no idea this story would become so well known. As I mentioned, I went on my honeymoon and didn't care to check Reddit, but my inbox is overflowing with requests for updates. Thankfully, nothing untoward occurred during the actual honeymoon. Jake didn't try to phone me, and he was still blocked. Violet texted Jake briefly to let him know that she hadn't discussed our chat and that she wanted to meet as soon as I got back from my honeymoon. A few hours had passed since the meeting. Violet didn't feel safe visiting our house, so we met at a cafe. At first, she was really protective and it was obvious from her demeanor and body language that she didn't want to hear what we had to say. However, we thoroughly explained everything to her. She first didn't believe us and called us crazy for making such a false accusation against Jake. I did, however, ask some acquaintances if they had any wedding films while we were on our vacation. Although there wasn't a single video that showed the full experience, other people were filming, so we were able to piece the incident together in general. After showing Violet those movies, I gave her the rundown on Ruth's entire predicament. At that point, she began to trust us. When she inquired about any past interactions between her and Jake, Zara adamantly denied it. It was difficult for Violet to accept that Jake would be so naive about everything, particularly if nothing was happening. Zara claimed to be equally perplexed. She didn't know how or when Jake fell in love with her, and she thought that she had fallen for him. They had only interacted for 10 or 12 times at most. We informed Violet that we believed it was our responsibility to notify her of the situation and that she might use the information however she saw fit. Additionally, we informed her that we had blocked Jake and would no longer be communicating with him, and we didn't anticipate this changing in the near future. She acknowledged that she could see our point of view, but she also stated that she wanted to speak with Jake right away. We made an effort to talk her out of it, but she felt that she owed it to herself to know if staying with Jake was wise, especially since she was pregnant. Zara and I both congratulated her on her pregnancy and assured her that we would always be there for her. Violet stated that although she was certain she wanted to move forward with the confrontation, she would have to reveal that we had contacted her and told her everything. Zara and I understood that supporting Violet was the correct thing to do, even though it wasn't ideal because we both wanted to avoid getting involved in Jake's turmoil. We assured her that she had our undivided attention and that we would stop at nothing to support her. I am aware that this is not the end, but that was the only thing that transpired during the meeting. For Jake, everything is about to explode up, and he has no idea what's going to happen. Update 2. Although I am aware that this update will be released shortly, this situation has gotten out of hand. I hate accidentally starting this storm, and Jake is going to take a serious hit. Violet wasted no time in getting right to the point after speaking with us. She asked Jake if he was at work when she called him. She stormed over to his office at that precise moment and confronted him after he said yes. It became ugly. She asked if he had done the things we had told her about and walked right into his office, which she was given permission to enter because she had told them she was dropping off some files for him. Violet wouldn't have it when Jake tried to explain that it wasn't the right place to talk and that they would talk about it when he got home. HR had to be summoned up to his floor because there was a good deal of shouting going on. This is where Jake's situation becomes even better. Or worse. Violet identified herself as Jake's girlfriend and revealed that she was pregnant when the HR assistant asked her who she was and why she was making such a fuss. She was shocked when Jake denied it. He categorically denied dating her. More shouting followed, and Violet was finally led away. That day a storm awaited Jake as he returned home. I don't know the specifics, but they got into a huge fight. I do know that it was discovered that Jake had been having an affair with Violet for a considerable amount of time, and that the lady he was having an affair with was the HR assistant who had stepped in to break the news. Jake is therefore doomed. Violet is a no-nonsense woman who doesn't put up with disrespect, therefore I'm positive that she will leave him. It is nearly impossible for her to forgive Jake and condone cheating. Jake's workplace has an extremely stringent no-dating policy about his affair partner. Employees are forced to sign contracts and other documents. His affair partner, let's call her Jane, found out that Jake had been pretending to be a single man and that he had a pregnant girlfriend after the altercation and Violet's tirade at work. When Jane discovered that Jake had been lying to her the entire time and that she was the other lady, she was horrified. Word spread quickly, and Jake is currently facing criticism at work for his actions. Jake is in a lot of trouble because Jane has ties to the company's executives, which makes things worse for him. He will undoubtedly lose Violet, and he may lose his job. Jake has nowhere to go because Violet has also evicted him from the house, which turns out to have been Violet's grandmother's. In the middle of the night, Jake came to see us and gave me an explanation of everything. For some reason, I let him in. Never in my life have I witnessed him so enraged. He would not stop yelling that Zara would one day leave me for him, that I had destroyed his life, and that I never deserved someone like her. I was genuinely concerned for his mental health because of how insane he sounded. He requires assistance, possibly from a psychiatrist or a therapist. Jake also became aggressive with me. I'm aware that I'll be called a fool for not calling the police on him, but ultimately, he's my brother, and I didn't want to add to his troubles. More than anything, I felt sorry for him. It's incomprehensible how one foolish choice can ruin someone's life. He had it all, a fantastic profession, a devoted and caring fiancé, and now a baby on the way, but he blew it all away with a series of foolish choices while living in a bubble of bizarre illusions. Right now, I simply feel bad for him. Update 3. Jake was laid off. Even while this is not shocking, I still feel horrible. Violet no longer wants to interact with him after their breakup. Violet has the full support of Zara, me, and my parents. Jake now believes that because of a harmless prank, I have alienated the entire family. Yes, He is now claiming that his pledge of unwavering love was a hoax. He has been totally shunned by the family, and no one is believing this new story of his. This drama has been annoying me. And I'm not sure where he's residing at the moment. As a recent bride, I can't keep rushing around cleaning up Jake's mess. I'm happy that I brought Violet into this in the first place, but I never imagined things would get so out of control. I don't see how Jake can get over this. It's a complete mess. I don't blame my parents for being upset with him because he threw everything away and was essentially a jerk. I don't know how he came to be this way. We weren't brought up this way. This will be my final update though. Zara and I have come to the conclusion that we must move on from this. Violet and our niece or nephew will always have a home with us and we will support them in any manner they require. We're done though, other than that. I appreciate all of the advice, Reddit. I never imagined that I would have my own dysfunctional story to tell, but that is what it is. After years of bullying, my sister invited me to dinner. When I arrived, she made me clean up, calling me a pathetic waitress. My parents have never concealed the fact that my sister, Helen, has always been the best child in the family. The youngest of my parents' children, she was considered their miracle child. Despite having serious health issues, my parents had been trying for years to have another child after me. My parents were effectively told to give up on growing their family after my mother experienced problems following my delivery, which prompted physicians to advise against getting pregnant again. But my mother defied all expectations and got pregnant again 5 years later. For my father, who was thrilled about the possibility of having another child, this news was nothing short of a miracle. This position as a miracle baby had a significant impact on my sister's upbringing and the way my parents regarded her. They have always treated her like a queen, going above and beyond to make sure she has the finest of everything. Her unique position within the family was further cemented by the lavish celebration of each of her accomplishments and milestones. It was obvious to everyone, including me, that my sister had a special and elevated place in our parents' affections since this partiality was never covert. Rather, it was publicly expressed and accepted. Not to be misunderstood, my parents also made sure I had all I needed. However, their treatment of me frequently seemed like an afterthought. For example, school functions. My parents would always choose to go to my sister's function if we had activities on the same day. As if my wants and occurrences were somehow less significant, they would explain that she was the youngest and so required them more. My parents still treasure the innumerable childhood photos of my sister that are painstakingly arranged in albums. They haven't even saved one of my albums, on the other hand, saying that my photos were lost in a storm. I would have liked to see how I grew up, therefore I wish they could have at least saved a couple photos. When my early life wasn't kept the same way as my sister's, it's difficult to avoid feeling like an afterthought. When I was growing up, my sister Helen's problems, no matter how minor, were promptly addressed and fixed. However, my father would brush me off and label me spoiled if I ever complained or wanted something. My mother would reprimand me for being more confident like my sister and accuse me of being overly theatrical if I ever felt nervous about trying new things or approaching strangers. I always felt that my sister's worries and emotions were more important than mine because of the way my parents treated me. Then came the game of blame. I was also held accountable for my sister's activities if she ever committed a transgression. My parents say that since I was the eldest, I ought to have taught her to be better. Because of my birth order, I was always held accountable, even if I had nothing to do with her behavior. This unwarranted ongoing blaming made me even more of the underdog and made me live in perpetual shadow of my sister. Helen didn't help either. She was well aware of how to take advantage of her status as the favorite child, and frequently used it to outdo me or get away with things. She would often coerce me into letting her use my possessions or put on my clothes without my consent during even the most minor arguments. She would go to our parents and complain if I ever ventured to object, accusing me of being conceited and self-centered. I would unavoidably receive criticism for not sharing and be made to feel guilty in every circumstance. But Helen's actions were distinctly biased. She was always very protective of her belongings and never let me touch them. We shared a room for a long time, and she aggressively protected her side and possessions. The dynamic remained the same even after we went into different rooms. She was quite particular about her belongings, but she always wanted me to be understanding and giving with mine. It was discouraging and frustrating to experience this double standard. I always felt alone and underappreciated because of Helen's ability to control circumstances to her advantage and my parents' steadfast support of her. They believed Helen could do no wrong, while I was always in the wrong, regardless of what I did. I had severe depression as a result of my parents' and sister's behavior. As a teenager, I experienced severe problems with my self-image and my confidence began to decline. Particularly when Helen would argue with me or make fun of me, the tension was unbearable. I was constantly on edge due to my fear of confrontation, and I frequently felt like I was about to have a panic attack because of my parents' combative yelling. I would feel as though I was choking beneath the weight of their disappointment and rage when they approached too close during their outbursts. My family didn't seem to be aware of or concerned about my difficulties. With no one to turn to for help, I felt like an animal in a cage, caught in a vicious cycle of mental and emotional suffering. Writing down my thoughts in a journal was therefore the only thing that gave me comfort. I would write my heart out on those pages every night, sharing my sorrows, disappointments, and anxieties. It was the only setting where I felt free to be totally open about my situation. It gave me some serenity and allowed me to process the pandemonium around me. Because I was worried that Helen may discover the journal and make fun of my weaknesses, I always kept it hidden beneath my bed. My worst nightmare came true one day. While I was out, Helen, who had a tendency of prying into my room even though I had repeatedly asked her to leave, discovered my journal. My one haven must have been violated when she read through its contents. My parents and Helen were seated in the living room with particularly serious expressions when I got home that evening. Given their solemn looks, I assumed there might have been a death in the family and inquired about their well-being. In order to speak with me, my dad asked me to sit down. As I obeyed, my heart began to race and I had a bad sensation in my stomach. Then, from behind her, my mother took my journal. When I demanded to know what she was doing with my journal, my eyes dilated in amazement and disbelief. While my mother gave me an unusually serious look and inquired as to whether what I had written actually expressed my innermost sentiments, Helen simply grinned, taking pleasure in my pain. I felt completely exposed and deceived at that very moment. My notebook had been my lone haven, where I could vent my suffering and annoyance without worrying about criticism or mockery. My deepest innermost thoughts were now exposed to the very people who inspired me to compose them. I was overcome by the seriousness of the situation, and while I fought to react, I could feel a panic attack coming. Yes, it did reflect my thoughts, I said gently, adding that they had no right to read it. My father shook his head and informed me that they were really worried about me if what I had written was accurate. He went on to add that after reading my journal, they felt that I was a psychopath, who needed assistance because of the hatred they thought I had for them, and I gazed at them in confusion. I was shocked beyond belief. I had never said anything harsh about my sister or my parents in my whole journal. All I had done was write down the feelings and experiences their acts had given me over the years. But here they were, turning my sincere thoughts into something evil. For keeping a notebook, my parents began accusing me of writing such dark things, and even calling me a psychopath. My mother continued by accusing me of making things up to fill the book and saying that neither she nor my father had ever treated me in this manner. I needed serious help, she insisted, before I harmed someone. Helen went so far as to comment that she was ashamed to call me her sister after reading my notebook since my actions were clearly not normal. Retorting that I had done nothing wrong and that I had not written anything negative about them, I attempted to defend myself. I clarified that they had no authority to condemn me based on my personal reflections because the notebook was only about my life. My family, however, was obsessed with their story that something was wrong with me and didn't care about my explanations. In front of them, I felt so vulnerable and exposed. They seemed to have taken away the last remnant of my privacy and turned it against me. The very following day, my parents informed me that I needed serious help before things turned south, and that they would be taking me to see a psychiatrist. It was obvious that they perceived me as the issue because of the disdain and misdirected worry in their statements. I experienced a crippling sense of powerlessness and betrayal. Instead of admitting the pain and harm they had caused, it seemed as though they were intent on making me the issue and changing the course of events. I was deeply hurt by the betrayal, and their reaction made me feel even more alone and powerless than I had already felt. I felt quite uneasy and guilty at first when I started seeing a psychiatrist, as though I had actually done something wrong. I was ashamed to express my thoughts as I had accepted the notion that I was the problem in my family. My psychiatrist recognized my hesitancy and attempted to close the distance by using my notebook. I felt more at ease and was able to open up when she read entries from it and asked me questions based on what I had written. Since it had always been easier for me to express myself on paper than in person, the journal was a useful tool throughout our meetings. But as I was getting married to the love of my life, everything changed. My parents contacted me after learning about my impending nuptials via cousins and other family members. They were obviously shocked to be left out of such a significant event in my life. They made an unexpected call. They reluctantly expressed sorry for their previous actions and acknowledged their wrongdoings. Since I was going to have a family of my own, they acknowledged that even though they couldn't alter the past, they still wanted to make new memories with me. They pleaded with me to pardon them and let them share in this new phase of my life. Their apologies was a surprising turn of events that had me face a variety of feelings. I chose to forgive them and invite my parents to my wedding since I was starting a new chapter in my life. In addition, they asked my sister to come, but I flatly refused, and they didn't pursue the matter. In retrospect, I'm glad I invited my parents, who had a great time at the wedding. The decision seemed natural since they were truly thrilled for my husband and myself. Since then I've tried to occasionally go over to my parents' house for supper in order to catch up. I occasionally have to talk to my sister on these visits. She still attempts to enrage me by making insensitive remarks about my marriage or my family, but I always make sure to confront her conduct head-on and correct her. Helen has only grown more resentful of me over the years, particularly after learning that I get along better with my in-laws than she does with her husband's family. Her in-laws have never truly embraced her into their family and apparently still hate her. She tries to put them down by making subtle remarks about my spouse or my in-laws. She expresses her annoyance and discontent with her personal situation through these comments. Helen keeps making these harsh remarks despite my dad's repeated observations of her behavior and his request for her to cease. I was told I was pregnant 4 months ago. My spouse and I are ecstatic about the news. He makes twice as much as I do, so we agreed that I should take a temporary leave of absence to concentrate on the pregnancy. My spouse and my in-laws, who have been quite sympathetic and supportive along this process, fully back this decision. My sister was incensed when she learned that I had chosen to quit my career in order to stay at home with my unborn child. Because they needed both of their earnings to make ends meet, her husband never permitted her to be a stay-at-home mother, which was the source of her rage. Helen never had the opportunity to unwind or take a break during her pregnancy, unlike me. As a result, whenever we get together, she criticizes my choice to express her displeasure. She has referred to me as foolish, and suggested that being a stay-at-home mom is humiliating. On multiple occasions, I have just laughed off her comments and told her that I had years of experience and could go back to work whenever I chose. Helen, however, has attempted to manipulate the issue by claiming that I should never have given up on my profession and that my husband is being domineering. This strikes me as ironic because I chose to leave my job. I am aware that her attempts to discredit my choice are obviously motivated more by her personal discontent with her life than by any genuine criticism of my decisions. I have made every effort to avoid her in order to preserve my mental health and give my whole attention to enjoying my pregnancy. My sister contacted me a week ago to invite me to a dinner party she was throwing. She wanted my spouse and I to go, and she intended to invite her in-laws and our whole family. I viewed this dinner gathering as a welcome diversion and an opportunity to mingle, as I hadn't gone out much since my pregnancy. I was more motivated to go since I reasoned that my sister would probably pay less attention to me with so many people around. Although I consented to go, things didn't work out that night. My spouse had to work late into the night to finish some last-minute chores. He was already under a lot of stress and he kept apologizing to me for being late to work. I didn't hold it against him because I knew that these things may happen. We were already running late for the dinner party when he finally arrived to pick me up. I thought it was better to be late than not at all, so I chose not to cancel despite the delay. As soon as we got to my sister's house, I saw that most of the people there had already eaten dinner and were chatting casually. My dad doesn't feel comfortable driving at night, so even my parents went after supper. My sister chastised us for being late right away, and although I didn't blame her for being irritated, I took the initiative to apologize on my husband's behalf because he was obviously humiliated by the circumstance. I was relieved when Helen ushered my husband to a chair and brought him a plate of food, but she drew me aside and led me into the kitchen. There she disclosed that there was no food left for me because everyone had already consumed their second or even third helping. This realization surprised me, especially since I was already really hungry and felt even more so because I was pregnant. I was disappointed, but I decided not to dispute or voice my displeasure. I told her that I could just order something online because I knew that our tardiness had caused this trouble. I could still eat in this manner without creating any more trouble. It was nice of her to nod and offer to order me something. However, she informed me that the least I could do tonight was wash the dishes because I had arrived so late and hadn't contributed much during the evening. I was surprised when she asked. I sneered and informed her that I hadn't anticipated being asked to work for her just because I was late for the dinner party invitation. Because I was late, I thought it was ridiculous to expect me to clear her visitors' plates. She reacted quickly and angrily. As her sister, I should be helping her, especially since she's been cooking so much all day, she shot out in a low, angry tone. She said that as my mother had assisted her in serving the guests at dinner, I should do the same because I was related. Helen made it clear that she wanted my assistance because her husband was never helpful in the kitchen. I countered that Helen shouldn't have invited so many people if she was feeling overburdened. She responded angrily and contemptuously, telling me that the least I could do was to keep quiet and provide her a hand because I would never be able to comprehend her predicament. In a scathing comment, she went on to say that it wasn't a huge problem if I assisted her as well because, now that I was pregnant, I was just a pathetic waitress for my husband at home. Her scathing remarks caught me off guard and were really painful. The weight of her remarks caused tears to build up in my eyes, adding to my already present feelings of hunger and emotional vulnerability. I hurried into one of Helen's bedrooms and closed the door behind me because I didn't want her to see me in distress. I had to locate a place where I could gather myself. Once inside, the usual feeling of being unable to breathe was overwhelming, and I could feel my old panic attack beginning to re-emerge. I fervently prayed that no one, including my spouse, would notice my misery and pursue me. I needed this alone time to get some peace and regain emotional control. After calming down and giving it some thought, I believed that Helen deserved to be disciplined once and for all because of her constant remarks and the way she continued to treat me. I made the decision to act against her. Finding all the pictures I had taken of my old journals was the first thing I did. I took my journal with me when I left my parents' house, and throughout the years, I began to save pictures of the journal entries in my email so I would always have a copy. I was able to locate pictures of my old journal entries, which described all the humiliations and complaints I had suffered at the hands of my sister years ago, thanks to this. Since my sister was only terrified of my brother-in-law, I decided to send him all the pictures before my husband and I departed that evening. I was aware that my parents would just chastise her for her behavior toward me, but she would never, ever change. I wanted Helen to go through a small portion of the humiliation that her husband rightfully inflicted upon her. I sent him a thorough letter outlining how Helen had been a major bully in my life. Helen had asked me to the dinner party, but I had to clean up after her and the other guests, I wrote in the message. I explained that she seemed to be jealous of my more thoughtful husband, which is why she was upset with me. In the hopes that he might better understand or take action, I tried to give him a clear picture of Helen's behavior and how it had affected me. Bill and Helen got into a heated argument as a result, as you may guess. Bill told our parents that he now saw Helen differently since he couldn't believe she had been harassing me for years. My dad has chosen to be a little more neutral, but my mother fully blames me for their argument since she feels that I went too far by exposing my sister. I have no regrets about letting my sister see her spouse. Update 1. For those who are curious, after learning what my sister said to me at the party, my husband is just as furious with her. He didn't know, but when I told him everything, he called my sister to vent his annoyance and correct her. I've never witnessed him so agitated, and Helen must have been really unsettled by his response. Additionally, he has made it very apparent to her that she should stop talking about our family going forward, especially since she is unaware of the whole truth. Update 2. My brother-in-law is furious with Helen since his own family has always thought she is egotistical and careless. Throughout their entire marriage, Helen had a tendency to place the blame for any argument or quarrel on everyone but herself. Because he loves her, Bill has been lenient toward her for a long time. But it was really eye-opening for him when I showed him my journal entries. He had never known our complex past, but he had always sensed that Helen and I were not particularly close. He had only witnessed a superficial aspect of our relationship and was ignorant of the seriousness of the problems that had existed between us because Helen had conveniently never told him the truth. His perception of my sister was drastically changed after hearing my side of the tale, which at last filled in a lot of the blanks. It demonstrated even more how accurate his family's assessment of Helen was. Bill told me all of this when he contacted me this week. He also wanted to hear it all straight from my point of view. We had a lengthy phone discussion, and I was more than happy to talk. I described all the hardships I'd gone through as a child, highlighting the way my parents had always given preference to my sister. Before I nearly cut them off after leaving for college, I told my parents how my psychiatrist had attempted to address these problems with them, but they had never admitted their mistakes. My brother-in-law also talked candidly about his own interactions with Helen throughout our talk. He described how she would occasionally treat him similarly, but he had always dismissed it as just her being herself. Even though he was aware of his own shortcomings in their relationship, he was shocked to learn about the ways she had harassed me over the years, even as an adult. It has truly caused him to reconsider their relationship as a whole. Helen may be acting harshly toward their child behind his back, which worries him as well. Update 3. For the final time, I'm answering some of your questions. After the party, my sister wrote me a number of angry texts and, of course, blamed me for everything. My husband had to step in and stop her. She hasn't contacted me or spoken to me since. Second, my mom has insisted that I inform Bill that I over-exaggerated the events from my early years and apologize. I adamantly declined, stating that my husband and I would cut her off if she persisted in endorsing my sister's position. But my father knows why I did what I did. Finally, I'm not sure what Bill will decide about his connection with Helen. My ultimate objective was to expose my sister and show her that she couldn't continue to get away with disparaging me. I have absolutely no regrets about what I did. Bill is now entirely responsible for determining what is best for his future. After 12 years together and 4 years of marriage, my husband wants to try polyamory after falling for someone else. Original post. Hi. I've been married to my hubby for 4 years and we've been together for 12 years. After a lot of financial struggle, we bought a house and we are now planning to get kids. A few months ago, my husband felt sick and had to stay home for a while. He decided to pick up an online game and started having weekly sessions with a group of players. Among them is a girl, 30, I think, and long story short, he fell in love with her. He broke down crying a month ago and admitted it. He told me it built up so gradually he didn't understand how he felt until it was too late. They started texting privately after meeting and eventually had one-on-one calls together. Then at some point, he said, she told him she was in love with him and he realized it was mutual. He said he told her it was impossible but loved her too. They tried to be just friends but they couldn't resist, and continued to show affection for each other. He showed me the texts, but also ventured into sexting. She asked if she could meet him face to face but he refused. So he told me all of this, apologized over and over again and told me he couldn't control himself and while he loved us both, it was me he would choose no matter what. I was still very upset and slept at a friend's that night to gather my thoughts. I decided to forgive him because he clearly felt guilt and wanted to work it out. I told him that while I was deeply hurt, I still appreciated him coming forward to me and being honest about what happened. We got into long conversations about how we were feeling in our relationship. I accepted he could love someone else but said I didn't like how he handled it. He agreed. And then yesterday he asked if I was comfortable opening up the marriage to polyamory. He said he still wanted to live with me and have kids but can't erase nor ignore the feelings he has for her. He says he wants to do it right and let us both see other people, with clear boundaries and communication and still be present for one another. I'm gonna be honest, it made me very uncomfortable at first. We have several friends who are poly, I know more or less how it works. But I never really thought about getting into it myself. I am not against it, it just never crossed my mind before. I am trying to think it through but it's a lot to take in. Sorry my writing is probably messy but it's kind of hard to focus. I guess it's too early to decide and we have a lot more to discuss beforehand, but still. Could you guys give me your opinions on this? Thanks a lot. Top comments. Commenter 1, I'd be divorcing so fast. Dog of the bone. So he cheated and now wants to be able to keep cheating by calling it poly, lol. Come on, do not have kids with this man for the love of God and if you have any self-respect you'll be serving him divorce papers as soon as possible. Sorry your husband is a cheating ass. Swamp Cats, you got married under the assumption you would remain monogamous. He is trying to fundamentally change the nature of your relationship. If I were you, I would drop any attempts at conceiving and figure out your next steps. Personally, I would not stay with someone who desired an open relationship. You need to decide if it's something you're willing to entertain or not. Update 1. First off, sorry I didn't reply to all your comments. I am very thankful for them. They helped me realize hard, but fair, truths about the whole situation. I waited for a bit to think about it all and had multiple long discussions with my husband. I wanted to confront him before making a final decision. To answer some of your questions, the other girl wanted to meet him, but they never did. Partly because my husband refused, but honestly, mostly because she lives too far from here. I still got checked for STDs though, and I'm clean, yay. As for our polyamory friends, they apparently were the ones who suggested he go down the polyamory road. I stopped talking to them for now. I'll deal with the bigger problem first. I told him his actions hurt me deeply and that while I appreciated him admitting his affair it was still infidelity. I told him what you guys said, that turning it into polyamory was merely green-lighting the affair after the fact. That polyamory should be built on mutual trust and communication, which he already broke. That I didn't feel respected. It destroyed him. He said he already knew, deep down, but didn't want to admit it, neither to me nor to himself. We both screamed and cried a lot. He finally admitted he wanted to open the marriage for selfish reasons. He is very sorry. He cut off contact with the other girl, let me fully access his computer and phone, and now wants to go to counseling to repair our relationship and marriage. He has shown me a lot of affection and attention since then, although he admits himself it's sometimes out of guilt and not just out of pure love. And now I want to make it work too, but, am I? Or is it a sunk cost fallacy? I don't know. Our first session is in 2 months, the earliest we could get, and every day I change my mind. Literally yesterday I wanted to leave him, while today I think it's worth giving it a try. Because we've known each other for so long, we understand each other on a very deep level, share a lot of interests and have already built so much together. He was there for me during hard parts of my life. He took responsibility for his actions and is really trying. Plus, if I leave him, I'd have to start my life nearly from scratch. Find a new place to live, go back into dating for the first time in 12 years. I don't want to lose everything. It sounds very hard and scary. Am I not too old for this? But at the same time, that's a form of denial, isn't it? It doesn't matter if those years were good, it's not going to be the same. Even if he gains my trust back, even if I forgive him, I'll never forget. I think he is genuinely remorseful, but isn't it too late for that? I am too empathetic. Him being present now doesn't erase what was done. Do I want to stay not because I still believe in this relationship, but because I don't have the strength to ask for a divorce? Because it's the easy choice, some kind of codependency? I have no idea. I can picture both paths clearly, and it's tearing me apart. I am lost, maybe even more than I was when I wrote my previous post. I've lost sleep and appetite, and I'm not sure I enjoy anything in my life anymore. I booked an appointment with a psychologist, for me alone, to help with this whole thing. I am sorry. At this point, I am rambling. I know I am the only one who can decide what's okay and comfortable for me or not. It's ultimately my choice and my choice only. The emotional hell I'm going through just makes thinking about that choice very hard and paralyzing. I'll go to both therapies and try to see what to do from here. I'll try to update, but it's probably going to take a while. I am sorry. I want to thank you again for your support, and I am sending you guys a lot of love. Edit. A couple of infos I should have mentioned but didn't because putting all of that into writing without omitting something is much harder than I thought. He cut off contact with her because once he told him he was married and wanted us both, she just ran away and broke up with him. There are times since then where my husband starts feeling sad or angry because of what's basically withdrawal. And for that he's smart, least sensible enough not to blame me. What kind of marriage did we have before this crisis? It will sound so naive. It's my first and only romantic relationship. We were very close and basically grew as adults together. We could talk about anything and understand each other. We shared the same values and interests. What changed? I think we got into a routine and he got bored. During our argument he said he was addicted to the attention the girl was giving him and that he felt I didn't show him I was in love with him enough anymore. I told him that even if it was true, he should have told me instead of having an affair. On one hand I have my faults too and I could accept this as one of them. On the other I was taking care of him and the house while he was sick. I don't think he believes it. I don't think he means it. But it makes me wonder whether I was actually a good wife for him. Even though I am not responsible for his actions. Thanks again for your support, y'all. It's a lot to process, but it helps me. So much. Relevant comments. OP on if she and her husband have kids and plans on getting counseling. OP, kids are off the table. If we do go into counseling, and it goes exceptionally well, maybe we'll talk about it. But for now, the distrust is already there. He says I love you, but I never know whether it's to regain my trust, whether he means it or not. Even if he does he love me or is it a lie he tells himself? Dog of the bone. If you choose to stay, don't be surprised if in a year you find him talking to someone again. Cheaters are sneaky, they'll show remorse and swear they've changed. Meanwhile they're smirking inside because they've started a new affair and think they can get away with it this time. OOP. Thank you, it's obvious and well known. Once a cheater, always a cheater. But reading it helps me fight denial. I really need to break up with him. If not for myself, just to show him that actions have consequences. Final update. TLDR. We are divorcing. Hooray. TW. Emotional affair, manipulation, self-harm threats, psychological abuse. Hey, I hope you are doing well. So my soon-to-be ex-husband had an emotional affair online and tried to make me greenlight it by asking for an open marriage, where we'd be allowed to have side adventures. I refused and his affair partner dumped him. He begged me to try to reconcile with him, to which I agreed, while I was actually trying to prepare my exit. We both went to individual therapy, still am. We separated temporarily 3 times, but every time I came back, it went terribly. He was desperate. He kept trying to cross my boundaries, love bombing me, playing the victim, asking to touch me even though I established I didn't want to, threatening to kill himself if we were to divorce. I could go on and on. This made me finally realize, along with my therapist's help, a lot of self-reflection and my exchanges on Reddit, that I was in an abusive relationship. Which is an important part, actually the most important part of this update. Please look up definitions and examples of abuse, because I had no idea that what my husband had been doing all these years, even before the affair, counted as such. In his case it was psychological abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping, blame shifting, emotional blackmail. Nothing aggressive or mean. Which turned me into a very submissive partner over the years, always catering to his needs while erasing mine. I rationalize everything. It happened subtly and gradually, and I was too naive to see it for what it was. His emotional affair and open marriage proposal were the natural continuity of that. Of course, the more I tried to get away from him, the more manipulative he got. Now that I was aware of it, I knew what he was doing. But fighting years of conditioning, even if you recognize it and succeed, is kicking exhausting and disarming. So, earlier today, I brought a friend home to assist me. We sat down, the three of us, and I told my husband we were over and I handed him the papers. It might sound dumb, but it's genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I was terrified. Yet he agreed. He repeatedly asked me if I was sure. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. Clearly mad and frustrated. But still, he agreed. He signed them and went back to his parents for now. We still have to go through the whole procedure, separate our assets, decide what to do with the house and all. And he still wants us to go to marriage counseling. But right now, I feel free, for the first time in months. The last hours have been a mix of tears, celebration and godly, restful sleep. And I have to thank you guys again, because my first Reddit post was the wake-up call I needed to eventually, finally, get here. Better late than never. Thank you so much. Lot of love to you all. Relevant comments. Fiona 7305. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. That's a special kind of asshole. Was it all for nothing? After cheating on his partner. He sounds like an insufferable dickhead, honestly. Congrats on your freedom. OP, I know, right? The hypocrisy, the nerves of this man. The worst part is that he appears very charming to everyone who knows him, myself included. Hell, a lot of people from our circle, who are aware of what he did, still think he's a good person who just lost himself for a while. I guess it's hard to accept that the ones we love can be terrible people too. Any decision, 470. You have been through a long, hard journey, and it will take a while yet, but you are investing in yourself and your health and happiness. Good for you. Continue self-care, and practice safety and security. Slow down and heal so that you will be strong and ready to seek and recognize true love. Wishing you a joyous future. You can do this. Oop, thank you. I'll do my best. I like to think the hardest part is behind me, but this story taught me to expect the worst. Whatever happens though, from now on, it's me first. I deserve love and happiness and I'll fight for it. Update 3. My previous post should have been the final update. I wish. God, I wish. But no, of course not. Of course it got worse again. Fuck my life. After my soon-to-be ex-husband signed the divorce papers, we went no contact, or at least, I tried to. He still sent me text messages, voice messages, and tried to call me multiple times. He even sent me a long letter full of statements such as, "I'm concerned that your mental health is deteriorating. I believe you need antidepressants to help you feel like yourself again." Or, "Your trauma is understandable, but it probably makes you want to punish me by making irrational decisions, like divorce." Or, "I am afraid you are surrounding yourself with questionable influences that have bad agendas. Please let me help you see it through." He claimed that the crisis was just as hard for him as it was for me. People told me he was escalating and that I should protect myself. I should have listened immediately, but I didn't react soon enough. Then he came to our street. He arrived uninvited and pleaded with me to give him a second chance. He said he wanted to be there for me and for us, insisting that he didn't deserve any of this. I started to feel distressed. He saw that I was unwell and wanted to comfort me, so he hugged me. But I didn't want to be touched. I'm pretty sure I told him no. I think I screamed no multiple times, but my memory is fuzzy. Either I misremember, or I did say no and he ignored it and didn't stop. I know it's just a hug, but it triggered a severe panic attack. He called emergency services, telling them he was worried about me because I wasn't myself. I had to ask the paramedics to make him leave. After that, he told me he was there for me if I needed him, but he thought we needed space. He contacted half of our social circle to inform them that I was unwell and needed support, our mutual friends, My colleagues, our neighbors, my physician. People reached out of the blue to ask if I was okay. I became paranoid, unsure of who to trust anymore. Close friends, my therapist, and people here helped me see things more clearly. My lawyer filed a restraining order against him, but unfortunately, it was refused. Not enough concrete evidence of a threat, apparently. I want to scream? We submitted a second request, which is currently being reviewed. In the meantime, I've moved into an apartment of my own. He doesn't know where I live. Hell, almost nobody does. I constantly wonder how he reacted when he found out. I'm still paying my half of the mortgage because nothing has been decided regarding our house yet. It's financially very hard for me, but I do feel safer. I am feeling much better, although I remain haunted by constant stress, sleep disorders, nightmares, nervous tics, random bursts of tears and rushes of anxiety. My physician prescribed me sedatives. They do make it easier. I realize I'm isolating myself more and more. I try to fight it, but I'm really afraid that sensitive information could leak, even accidentally. I've started reaching out to my closest friends again, as much as I can. I'm trying to come back here on Reddit. I keep going to therapy. It's necessary. Because one part of me, the part he cultivated for so long, urges me to stop all of this. To go back to the house, cancel the restraining order, cancel the divorce, call him, apologize, and repair our relationship. It would be insane. I am not going to do that. I do not listen to that little voice. I don't. But when your defenses are attacked over and over again, it becomes incredibly hard to reason properly. I can't wait for the divorce to be over. I just want to move on. I want all of this to be behind me. I'm sorry this is bleak. I wish I would have left sooner. I just hope this can help someone. Anyone. Relevant comments. OOP needs to get cameras for her new place. OP, I already have a Ring doorbell. I am waiting for this month's salary, which should probably arrive today or tomorrow, to buy additional cameras. I also got my landlord's authorization to add latches to the door. I hope this will help. OOP talks with her therapist about how manipulative her ex is. OOP, my therapist is aware. She stopped putting gloves on a while ago and straight up said his behavior is abusive. She encouraged me to move out and gave me a lot of grounding and breathing exercises to help me when it gets overwhelming. As I said in another comment, I'll see if I can find someone else, maybe specialized in trauma, but the waiting list can be very long here. I've been journaling for a few months now and it's true that it helps a lot. As for my friends, I have a couple ones I really trust and they already know everything. I am trying to find a balance between venting to them about all of this and keeping some lighter, positive interactions. Anyway, thanks for your support. It means a lot to me. My sister sabotaged my wedding. And now, with her struggles to conceive, my parents want her to share my baby. As a little background, my sister Pam, 30F, persuaded our parents and a few of our family members not to come to my wedding. She believed it was inappropriate for me to marry her while she was divorcing. She turned to lying and spreading rumors to get people to avoid me because the truth alone wasn't enough to make them hate me. My spouse and I recently shared on social media that I am currently in my second trimester of pregnancy. I am 27F. My parents and Pam learned about it in this way, and after we had not spoken for over 3 years, they tried to mend things with me. Why? Pam is sadly unable to conceive due to her infertility. Despite the fact that she has failed multiple IVF cycles, she is adamant about trying again. Pam does not believe that surrogacy or adoption are the best options for her at this time. Since I'm expecting a child, my parents thought it would be beneficial to make amends with Pam so she could spend time with a child who is not directly linked to her. They even proposed that the child have 2 mothers, saying that this would benefit me because I would receive more assistance. My parents really only want to pretend to be a happy family, now that Pam is unable to have children of her own. During the call, I was able to see through their phony politeness. I informed them that I would not accept this idea and that it was completely irrational to expect me to comply. To be honest, it was ridiculous that they even believed I would think about letting Pam act as the mother of my future child. I clarified that they shouldn't have done it because I was expecting a baby and they wanted to give Pam a plaything, but rather because they truly loved me and were sorry for how they treated me. They took issue at what I said, claiming that Pam was prepared to volunteer for her future niece or nephew and that they were just providing assistance because they knew I would require assistance when the kid was born. They said I was being too harsh and that it was all perfectly innocent. I replied that my husband and in-laws were already providing me with all the assistance I required because I was the mother. They should keep avoiding me in the future if it was easy for them to do so in the past. Here's where I might have gone too far. I suggested that Pam might not be able to conceive because she was a horrible person and wouldn't be a good mother. My parents, a few family members, and of course Pam herself sent me a ton of texts after that call. They all demand that I should apologize to them, claiming that what I said was needless and unkind. I shouldn't kick people when they're already down, they say. The issue is that I can still clearly recall every event leading up to my wedding, and I harbor deep animosity toward Pam for her actions. I find it hard to feel bad about what I said. To put things in perspective, while I was organizing my wedding, Pam had already been married for 2 years. Prior to their marriage, she and her ex-husband had been dating for 3 years, and she had always understood his desire to live a childless life. When they began talking about their future after a year of dating, it was among the first things she brought up to our parents. Even though I was in the room at the time, they continued their chat as usual, acting as though I wasn't there. Another problem is that even as a child, Pam and I have never gotten along. She has always been the beloved daughter of our parents. When we were younger, we used to quarrel a lot, but eventually we just learned to ignore one another. She therefore knew for a fact that she wanted children in the future, even if she was telling our parents that her ex-boyfriend preferred a childless existence. In the end, they agreed to bring up the subject again when they were married, and she hoped that by then, he would have changed his mind. She tried to persuade him to have children, but he refused to change his views, and they started fighting a lot. She would frequently look very distraught at family gatherings and tell about how hard it was to stay with him all the time. Her decision to wed a man who had made it apparent that he didn't want children was, in my opinion, her fault. It was she who thought she could make him reconsider. However, she had no right to hold him responsible when she was unable to. Naturally, I kept all of this to myself since I knew it would just cause more problems. I tried to persuade him for a few months before my parents informed me that Pam had returned to live with them permanently following a heated argument with her husband. They told me there was no way out of it at this point. My spouse and I had just begun making deposits for our wedding at this point. After almost 4 years of dating, we had been engaged for a few months. We had waited until we were both comfortable in our employment, even though we had been prepared for marriage for a while. My parents therefore told me that they wanted me to put off my wedding forever when they told me that Pam and her husband were going to divorce. They didn't want me to marry Pam at the same time she was divorcing in order to offend her. They said that Pam already had it difficult because she had to postpone her intentions to have a baby. They said that I should not forward with my wedding in order to spare her feelings because she truly wanted to become a mother. It was likely the most ridiculous and inconsiderate thing they had ever tried to get me to do. I informed them, of course, that I would not delay my wedding for Pam. Whether she liked it or not, I was going to marry. Since we were never close, I didn't care what she thought about my wedding. But my choice did not sit well with my parents. They were upset because I wasn't prepared to put their beloved daughter's sentiments ahead of my own wedding arrangements. They warned me that they wouldn't go if I didn't postpone the wedding. I knew my parents had a soft place for Pam, but I never imagined they would go to such lengths for her, so that was incredibly upsetting and devastating to me. Nevertheless, I accepted it and informed them that they may do as they pleased. Pam wasn't content, even though it should have been the end of it. She didn't like that I was getting married, so she made sure the rest of the family didn't come either. She initially only tried to win people over by saying that it was rude of me to get married while she was going through such a difficult period. Although the majority expressed sympathy for her, they did not specifically state that they would not attend my wedding. She made the decision to step it up after realizing this. She began spreading stories about me because the truth wasn't contentious enough. Pam started claiming that I had been persuading her husband to divorce her because I was envious of her and couldn't bear the idea of her having a child before me. I had never been friends with her spouse, so the allegations were ridiculous. If he and I had ever gotten close, I genuinely doubt Pam would have married him at all. People began to believe her, though, for some reason. She even claimed that I had been bothering her by convincing her spouse that he would be happier without her and manipulating him to leave her. Pam claims that I was to blame for his lack of desire for children since I had reportedly persuaded him that having no children was the way to go for our generation. All of it was false. I assume she lied so firmly that others started to believe her, even though I hadn't really engaged with my brother-in-law when he was married to Pam. Many folks turned down my wedding invites. A couple of my supportive cousins and other family members told me about Pam's comments, so I already knew why. I wasn't shocked to learn that no one provided me with a detailed explanation for their refusal. Only a few relatives and a few individuals from my side of the family came to my wedding. Everyone else was either a friend or a co-worker. On the bride's side, the attendance was dreadfully poor. In the weeks before the wedding, I recall being really furious about all of this. Many individuals had already made up their minds, and some had even blocked me, but I knew I could try talking to them and being honest. I didn't bother because it would have been my word against hers. Fortunately, my spouse, friends, and in-laws were there to support me on the wedding day. I barely noticed that so many of my family members weren't present because they made sure I had so much fun. I haven't forgiven Pam for what she did though, simply because I had a good time on my wedding day. She was vengeful and vicious in what she did. She made sure I wasn't happy just because she didn't get her way, which was quite typical of her. She had been like way since she was a child, but most people get over those habits, especially by the time they are in their late 20s. Regretfully, I am unable to say the same for her. I cut her and my parents off entirely after that incident, and my animosity toward them only deepened. I saw Pam's ex-husband for the first time since their divorce around a year later. One day while my husband and I were out to lunch, we noticed him eating with some of his coworkers. We weren't expecting him to greet us, so it was a little awkward, but he approached our table, congratulated us on our wedding, and expressed regret for not being there. He clarified that it was because of my sister's predicament. We were also courteous because he was chit-chatting, and my husband even made a joke about how he might as well have come because Pam didn't show up. Pam's ex-husband then appeared truly perplexed. At that point, we began discussing the events leading up to the wedding. He revealed how Pam had repeatedly postponed the mediation sessions and postponed the divorce by claiming she was too preoccupied with getting ready for my wedding. When her ex-husband learned she hadn't even gone, he became perplexed. Her sudden interest in my wedding had surprised him, but he had refrained from confronting her because he didn't want to accuse her of postponing the divorce out of fear. He just dealt with everything as calmly as he could. We discussed the facts after he gave us his version of events, which included Pam's failure to attend the wedding, her spreading false information about me, and her accusation that I was attempting to end her marriage. After expressing his shock that Pam would act in such a manner, he revealed the true cause of their split. It was a far deeper issue than a dispute over having kids. After months of arguments about whether or not to have children, her ex-husband finally began to take her point of view into consideration and was on the verge of changing his mind. She told him something that made all the difference the day he made the decision to talk to her about it. She appeared ecstatic when he informed her that he was at last prepared to think about being a parent. Then, in what she believed to be a jest, she said that he would have had to accept it sooner rather than later, even if he hadn't been prepared. She acknowledged that she had surreptitiously stopped taking her birth control pills without notifying him when he asked her to explain. She might have gotten pregnant if they had kept going that way, making plans for him to simply deal with it. He was unable to accept this perverse scheme. She had deceived us into believing that their disagreements were solely about having children, but in reality, their most recent dispute had been about her treachery. Pam made an effort to make it seem lighthearted, but it didn't make her actions any less serious. In essence, she was attempting to trick him into becoming pregnant so that he would be forced to accept the pregnancy at any time. My husband and I were more clearer on why she had behaved so erratically around the time of our wedding after that talk with her ex-husband. She was aware that she was to blame for her divorce. She could have kept it to herself and none of this would have occurred, even if she had taken the risky decision to stop taking her birth control. She may have even given birth to a child with her spouse, but she ruined everything for herself before venting her frustration on me. I became much more resentful of her after discovering all of this. I had the option of telling my parents and other family members the truth, but I decided against it. I had already severed my connections with people who hadn't been at my wedding by that point, and to be honest, I just wanted to get on with my life. I made the decision to remain silent and continue. But to be honest, I don't feel bad about what I said because I hate her so much. I genuinely think it's fortunate that she hasn't been able to have children because I don't think someone with her personality could be a decent mother. The fact that she and my parents only contacted me because I am pregnant and they wish to play happy family with my unborn child further bothers me. That simply will not occur. Regarding the notion of my child having two mothers, I concur with my in-laws and my spouse that it is not essential. People's reactions to my comment, especially those with whom I get along, are the only reason I'm even slightly unsure. So am I the jerk for suggesting that my sister might not make a good mother, which is why she hasn't been able to conceive? In response to inquiries, Pam has not remarried and, to the best of my knowledge, is not currently seeing anyone. Although I don't know much about her personal life, I've learned from friends and family that she is totally unmarried and that her primary goal at the moment is to have children. You can guess why she isn't interested in adopting a child or using a surrogate. In my opinion, it's because she feels that a child isn't truly your child unless you've given birth to it yourself. She has been trying for over 3 years, including when she tried to conceive with her spouse and when she used donors for IVF following the divorce. So far, nothing has worked for her. Most people would think about other choices by now, but she isn't interested, and that's her decision. The fact that she and my parents only tried to reconcile, after I revealed my pregnancy is what truly seems odd. The remark about two mothers stuck with me. Additionally, you all observed that they made particular reference to the fact that this baby would be linked to her by blood. Technically speaking, my child would be her blood relative because she is my biological sister. However, bringing it up while trying to make amends is odd, and their actions simply gave off a disturbing, almost baby stealer atmosphere. I'm afraid she'll start projecting and acting like the mother if I do try to forgive her and give her some contact with my child. I can't allow that to occur. Some of you have questioned why I haven't defended myself in front of the rest of the family or spoken out about the true cause of her divorce. In all honesty, I don't believe it's worth it. I became aware of my true friends and supporters after the wedding. Everything that transpired deeply wounded me, and even though I wanted to speak out about the truth, I decided against it. I wanted to be left alone. Even a few family members with whom I get along well said that I was a little callous when I told Pam that she couldn't have children. Although they don't expect me to apologize, they do believe it was a little too severe. These folks have always stood behind me, so that's why I'm worried. If they too think I was too severe, then maybe I should be worried. Update 1. I appreciate all of the comments left on my post. I appreciate your support, even though it seems like most of you believe I'm NTA. I will continue to ignore Pam and my parents, and I have made the decision not to apologize to them. They are obviously unhappy about this. On social media and in real life, they are acting like the victim and disparaging me in front of our family members once more. I already don't talk to those people, so I'm not bothered by it. What could possibly go wrong? That they will further isolate me. I made the decision to talk to my family members that support me yet disagree with my remark and address it. Almost everyone in the family is aware of what happened and what I said, and Pam and my parents have made a big issue out of it. I reached out to people who truly care about me since I won't engage with someone I don't get along with. I admitted to them that, in the heat of the moment, I had uttered those things. However, that doesn't change the fact that Pam's deliberate attempt to draw attention to herself during my wedding was much worse. For years, Pam has been mean and disrespectful to me, and I won't say I'm sorry for something that might even be true. She won't be significantly impacted by my remark, at least not in the same manner that she did me when she created rumors. Because of what she said, my family declined to come to my wedding. It's not the same thing because my viewpoint won't stop her from being pregnant. Those who were on my side are still supportive, and my relatives seem to understand this. I'm okay with them deciding not to talk about it anymore. All I want is for my pregnancy to be a joyful and healthy one. I hope this tension between Pam and my parents ends quickly. I don't want them to stretch this out because I might have to tell them some things they won't like. This is something I really don't want to deal with, especially now that I'm expecting. Update 2. My parents have been playing the victim and informing everyone in the family about what I said for the past 2 weeks since I last spoke to them on the phone. They have been pleading with others to avoid me, to never communicate with me again, and even to cut me off from family members that get along well with me. They basically want me shunned by the entire family. My parents haven't been successful in their strategy though, because as I indicated, I was able to work things out with the people I care about. They obviously didn't like it, so they posted disparaging remarks about me on social media. I am aware that the posts are about me even if they haven't specifically mentioned me. They have been discussing a particular relative who has always tried to ruin lives, and always been jealous of Pam. That's why I allegedly made fun of her infertility, they say. I knew it was all lies, so at first I didn't care. But it really got to me when they recently posted that I was the one who destroyed Pam's marriage. I chose to reply since they were repeating the same falsehoods they had told me around the time of my wedding. I made contact with my former brother-in-law. Even if we don't communicate frequently, we are on speaking terms because we still greet one another on holidays and on our birthdays. I told him everything that had been going on and asked if he would mind if I told the truth in public. I did what he told me to do. The drama has escalated since I wrote about Pam's actions and the true cause of their divorce. Although I haven't spoken to anyone directly, family members have been calling, texting, and emailing me to ask whether it's true, to ask me to remove the post, and even to accuse me of lying about Pam once more. None of them have received a response from me. My parents and Pam, on the other hand, have remained remarkably silent, which suggests that they have little to defend themselves. They'll find words though, I'm sure. Even after all of this, it's disheartening that no one in the family has bothered to apologize to me, but it's okay since it's exactly what I anticipated. I believe I've been successful in exposing Pam for who she truly is, which was my major objective. I'm just going to relax and observe what happens next. Update 3. Pam and my parents finally contacted me a few days after my last post, stating that they were prepared to apologize. but only if I consented to have my post removed. The rest of the family hasn't expressed regret to me, but they seem to have contacted my parents and Pam to criticize their actions. They told my parents that it was unfair to portray me negatively when Pam was ultimately to blame for her divorce. My relationships with my parents have suffered greatly as a result of their years of deceiving the family. It's amazing how fast certain family members went from detesting me to betraying Pam. However, as I already stated, I don't hold it in high regard for those who assumed that I was the cause of Pam's marital issues. They're now equally eager to assume that she was at fault from the beginning. They still refuse to say sorry, and the majority of them have ceased getting in touch with me. No one is requesting me to remove the post, and no one is interested in knowing if I was speaking the truth. I replied to Pam and my parents that I would wait to remove the post until I felt like it. I don't care about their apologies anymore. I responded to their email correspondence and subsequently blocked them. They haven't made an attempt to get in touch with me since, but this morning I made the decision to remove the post, not for them, but rather because I don't want my social media accounts to be overflowing with posts about unimportant people. Retaliation isn't beneficial, and as I mentioned, I want a pleasant and healthy pregnancy journey. Furthermore, I believe that's sufficient punishment for Pam and my parents because they are who they are. I have family and friends who truly care about me, and my spouse and I are content. I really only need that. It doesn't really matter what my sister and parents are doing these days. I hope they understand after everything that has transpired that I don't want to interact with them ever again and avoid me. That's all I have to say, and considering everything that has happened, I doubt they will get in touch anytime soon. I'm grateful to everyone who has helped me, answered my messages and given me guidance. It is really important to me. Am I the jerk for refusing to confess just to take communion at my brother's wedding? Original post, I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40M, 38F, 27M, and we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother Luke is engaged to his GF of a year Emma, 28F. She is nice I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke and it has always been a sibling joke that I'm truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I'm just polite and civil, always include her when planning stuff but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it but we just shrugged it to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church, fine by me. Then she requested that the immediate family submit their dress planning so she could check it fits the wedding dress code, fine whatever. You see where this is going, I hope. You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate in. Well, this is not good enough for her and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no and she has not taken it well. For the most part I avoid her as I said before, but this time I wasn't going to say yes or risk an issue. I told her that for taking communion one needs to go to confession and I didn't want to. She said all the immediate family is doing it and it will look bad if I don't. I told her sure fine, then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody but won't do confession. She said if this was going to be my attitude I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him thanks, gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understood my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. Hey Tia? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. You should alert the priest to her behavior. He will ensure that she stops with her actions. She cannot make rules that do not exist in the church. I would send a quick email to him and let her deal with the consequences of her own actions. OOP. I actually considered it, but I don't think I will since my grandma might be doing it herself. She is lapsed herself but didn't want me to be disrespectful, but she knows the priest that will be officiating and is not really happy with all the shit show. Why Emma is pushing this? I honestly believe it's more her trying to have authority over me than her religious views. My oldest brother finds it ridiculous but said he would not intervene unless I ask him to, which I appreciate cause despite Luke acting like a dipshit I don't want more drama. Commenter, just consider that the less you do the longer this drama will go on. Maybe getting more people involved would actually shut her behavior down for good. OP, I don't want to give her the attention she craves. My grandma said she will handle it with the priest and I will simply sit down. My whole family and most of the common friends know already. Luke and Emma themselves told them and shot themselves. Demand an apology in order to go. I already told my parents I am not coming no matter what. They are clearly not pleased with how she spoke to me, but even more displeased with my brother, but we agreed on not intervening more. If he wants to marry her, it's his decision. He's an adult and needs no permission, but what he would lose has been made clear to him. Commenter, I would let grandma handle it. She sounds feisty. How old is she? Oopie, my grandpa used to say she was like a firecracker lol. She's 81 and has been lapsed for like 25 years I think. She still has friends in the church community and all, but they respect her decision not to participate in the rites anymore. Commenter, yeah, I would definitely let her handle it then. Please keep us updated. I really want to know if the wedding even happens. OP, I am conflicted because I do love Luke very much but I dislike him right now. I know grandma is fair and just. Also now I am sure Emma doesn't even know why grandma is lapsed and might be in for a shock. Commenter, can't you just go get a blessing? I'm an atheist but my parents are hardcore Catholics and my dad became a deacon last year. They asked us, me and my siblings, to go get blessings as a compromise as none of us are religious. I still declined personally but my understanding is that going to get a blessing is common for non-confirmed and considered an act of participation. If you're just lapsed, rather than actively rejectful, then that seems like a perfect compromise, and one where you can pretend to be going for communion before crossing your arms before the priest, or whichever signal said church uses. OP, my issue is not about the blessing, it's that she singles me out and wants to have some sort of authority above me. A bunch of my family are lapsed but she has not made a big deal over it except of me. Her stupid argument falls apart because my oldest brother is also lapsed, but she doesn't seem to care or maybe she has not realized it. She has not mentioned anything to him, but is making a huge deal because I don't participate. One of the top comments, lucky effective 1564, NTA who died and made Emma Pope. OOP, LOL I will share this particular one with my grandma next time we talk. She is gonna love it. Update post 1. Things have moved but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young but not like a teen or a child obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses her being very my way or the highway with younger people so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother Robert is very no-nonsense and he has never been a fan of Emma but he didn't think he should have to intervene because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships. All this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit grandma a lot since she lives by herself and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking to be honest, she asked us all to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion and Emma said that she was her elder and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and looked at Luke for help. Luke on the other hand was staring angrily at Robert and I but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma he was the reason grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen he came out as gay and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it, and even worse when she went and spoke about this with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school and told her that Robert was committing sins, he was going to hell, he needed to find his way, the whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years she started getting into the whole community again, but she decided she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman and he explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her, like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession, but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. More was said, nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again but declined going. Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh. And yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama, but now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believe this and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ+ members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So Grandma explained to Luke and then call every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt and explain to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from these places and so had Robert, and they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the bases just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the first couple of calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow. Robert is livid, our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid and say Luke lied, even the cousins that were telling me to stop being a stubborn head are livid. By the time I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there and the youngest one, Sarah, 16F, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimeters smaller than Luke and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him and she admitted it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying she would do everything for any of us. Explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean she loved the rest any less. She is a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought she hurt her grandchildren. It was a shit show, a big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to, but after they heard what happened they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousin group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reigning all us would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody really and he just tried to be the center of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was gonna marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler and for many years only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was gonna marry his now wife through a text but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was born 4 months before Luke's graduation, and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate and we didn't notice. Maybe it was his last-ditch effort. Maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people. I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter: wow, it sounds like it is self-projection from Luke. He is the conniving asshole he is saying Robert is. OOP: Robert is the type of older cousin Sarah would call if she is drunk at a party and needs a safe ride. He also did it for Luke, which is why I don't get his deal. Commenter: irrational behavior is called that because it can't be rationalized. Luke is exhibiting very irrational behavior, which is why you'll never understand it. The best you can hope for is that he gets some serious therapy and pulls his head out of his ass sooner rather than later. OP: if he asked for help and apologized sincerely, I would be there in 2 seconds. He knew what he was doing when he spoke without Grandma. He knew it would cause her pain. He knew he would hurt Robert too. Robert might not be crying, but he feels bad about the situation. He has always looked out for everybody and even has pics of him holding every single one of us as babies all over one of his walls. I always knew they were not the closest of brothers, but this is too much. Commenter: this is not your doing. Understand, this is all Emma's fault. She knows it too. I'd bet money she is realizing how much her need to feel superior to you is costing. Wait. OOP: logically, I know this is on Emma and Luke, but seeing my grandma so sad and trying to convince everybody she loves us makes me feel bad. I know she will bounce back though. Commenter: it may be that her purpose is to isolate him. Please tell your grandmother from another old lady not to doubt herself because Luke has decided to live in crazy town. OOP: I don't know anymore. He is still very active with our maternal family so far. I am unsure how they will react when or if they hear what happened because both families have a great relationship. He still has a strong support system when it comes to friends. Some even dislike or disapprove of Emma and are vocal about it. I am seriously on the wave that this was low-key less about me and more a poke to Robert. And thanks, she really needs a lot of love. Commenter: NTA, your little brother and his fiancée sound insane, as he thinks y'all are obligated to let some unhinged random woman to rein you all in because he likes fucking her. With his tactics with your grandma, I think you need to stop saying this is all on Emma. Look back at her having an issue with you because of how you mistreat Luke. Which from your account doesn't seem happens. It sounds like your brother has created a narrative of the situation that is likely not recognizable as truth by anyone else. Maybe he resents being the kid and no one listening to him and figures he can get his way by acting victim. Who knows? OP, you hit a point I've been trying to avoid. Maybe he has been like this all the time and Emma is just putting a magnifier on it. I must say he was the center of attention when it was about him. Graduations, birthdays, presentations, engagement party. He got celebrated on his achievements just as loud as everybody else. Grandma tried to always be there, so did our parents. He was always invited to stuff, always asked for his opinion on group decisions. He has always been loved. Commenter: I posted this on the other post, but if she is such a good Catholic, she should know you can't take communion anyway, since you weren't married in the church. I wouldn't break the rules for this psycho. Hope your brother gets away from her before she hurts any more people. OP: oh, that is so out of the question now. I wouldn't go to that wedding even if the Pope himself asked me to. I am going no contact with Luke and so are most of my relatives due to his conversation with Grandma. My mom kicked me out for her new family, then demanded college money for my siblings when she found out I'm successful. To put things in perspective, my mother gave birth to me at the age of 20, and my biological father was never involved. He never wanted children, she told me, and because they had only been dating for a few months when she became pregnant, she offered him the option to leave, which he did. She stated that because of the bitterness of their breakup, she had chosen not to demand child support from him and he had also refused to pay. Never talking again was convenient for both of them. She was fortunate to have my grandparents' unwavering support and encouragement, which enabled her to finish her schooling and secure employment. She dated a couple men while I was younger, and she began dating Harry, a co-worker, when I was about 8 years old. Before getting married, they dated for over 3 years. Although we weren't very close, Harry and I got along well enough to put up with each other being in the house. When my mom became pregnant 4 years after they were married, everyone was overjoyed, including me. In retrospect, I probably should have known what was going to happen, but I was too preoccupied with the idea that my mother would always support me. I hoped Mom wouldn't leave me now because she had endured a lot of challenges raising me by herself. She obviously distanced herself from me after she married Harry, and we began to drift apart, but I thought it was only a phase and that things would improve. During her pregnancy, I did my best to be encouraging, but she appeared to get angrier every time I was there. To avoid disturbing her, I made the decision to become scarce, but it seems that I wasn't inconspicuous enough. She and Harry sat me down for a serious conversation 6 months after she gave birth to twins. They informed me that they couldn't keep me in the house since they had 2 children to look after. They couldn't legally throw me out without getting in trouble because I was still a juvenile, having just turned 16. By highlighting the financial burden of providing for a big family, on their meager income, they attempted to persuade me otherwise. Since we had been living comfortably up until that point, I honestly didn't think it was hard to maintain 2 adults, 1 teenager and 2 kids on the salary of 2 web engineers. They clearly only wanted me gone. I genuinely didn't want to leave, so even at that point I attempted to offer ways to stop it. If money was a problem, I offered to acquire a job, but my mother said she wanted to save money and resources for the children who deserved it more. She stated that they deserved to stay with them more than I did, not that they needed this more. That was all it took for me to decide that I had to leave because it was obvious that no one wanted me. They knew I had enough dignity to know I was unwanted, so they had only nudged me in the right way after I left, without even telling me where I should go. Their strategy was successful. Since they hadn't really evicted me, it wasn't technically an eviction, but I would still consider it to be the same. I felt like I had no other choice after they had forced me into a difficult situation. I went straight to my grandparents' house when I left that day. They wanted to be there for the twins, so even though they were upset about what my mother had done, they didn't cut her off. At 16, I obtained part-time work because I could no longer financially rely on my grandparents due to their advanced age. When my mom and Harry went to visit my grandparents with the kids, I would see them every now and then, but they seldom ever inquired about me. They tended to be very formal, as if they didn't miss me at all, even when they did see me. They actually appeared to be happy without my presence. I was saddened by my mother's apparent decrease in irritability, but I knew there was nothing I could do about it. Until it was time to go to college, I lived with my grandparents. My mom wasn't involved with me even then, so I had to rely on friends to assist me get settled in my dorm because my grandparents weren't old enough or healthy enough. My mom and Harry declined, preferring to preserve money for the twins' future, so I had to take out a student loan, and one of my relatives co-signed for it. Fortunately, one of my uncles agreed to assist if I assured him that he would never be responsible for any of the costs. I worked while I was in college to make sure I wouldn't fall behind on my payments and to give myself a financial advantage. My mother and I hardly spoke once I started college, and only my grandparents were present when I graduated. Not even my mother bothered to congratulate me. In order to avoid being a burden to my elderly grandparents, I began working and lived independently after college. Although I didn't make much money during the first few years, I was still able to pay for groceries, utilities, rent, and even started to pay off my debt while setting money up for the future. In fact, I would describe that as living on a limited income. Fortunately, things finally got better. It took a while, but I eventually rose through the ranks of my organization. Considering that I received very little assistance, I'm proud of how far I've gone and am now in a rather comfortable posture. Unexpectedly, my mother discovered that I earn a good living, even though we haven't spoken for many years. At nearly 33, I currently hold a senior management role at the same organization where I began my career. About 4 months ago, I got a big promotion, but I wanted to keep it a secret, so only a select few individuals knew about it. To thank my uncle for co-signing my loan back when I was having trouble paying for college, I did inform him. According to what I understand, he just met my mom and Harry at a family get-together and urged her to get in touch with me to congratulate me on my success. Even though I'm sure he meant well, it didn't work out because she didn't even get in touch with me to offer me congratulations. In the end, my mother learned about it and recently visited my home with Harry, insisting on talking to me. I should note that I haven't spoken to her since I started college. I blocked her everywhere and left her out of my life after graduating since I didn't think there was any use in hoping she would change her mind. She didn't appear to be negatively impacted, and to be honest, I doubt she even noticed. Only my grandparents, who were aware that I disliked discussing my mother, were in contact with me and they steered clear of the subject. I didn't really stay in touch with my uncle either, so I was unaware that my mom and Harry had been having financial difficulties for a few years. Only when they arrived at my door and told me how bad things had gotten did I find out. It was wishful thinking, but the only reason I even allowed them inside was because I hoped they would be coming to make amends. They began by stating that they had heard from my uncle about my promotion and how I was one of the youngest individuals in such a prominent position in my firm, rather than congratulating me on my accomplishment. It seems that they were surprised that I had kept it from them. Ironically, I was taken aback that they expected me to communicate with them at all, much less deliver any positive news. Additionally, they were disappointed that I had shut them out of my life, claiming that it was only because they had prioritized their children above me. They maintained that I should have been old enough to comprehend their rearranged priorities and not harbor resentment as a teenager. They said that I should have supported their decisions rather than going in with my grandparents. I'm not even sure why they thought I would agree with their choice to expel me from the house. They tried to gaslight me into thinking that I was the bad guy for being angry that they had ejected me so they could spend time with their children alone, but that's how they began our reunion after all these years. They talked about how tough the past several years had been for them without even giving me a chance to explain my side of the story. They described how they had launched their own company but, regrettably, it did not succeed, resulting in losses. They were now attempting to make up for previous losses, and they desperately needed money as the twins were getting close to college age. I saw then why they had come. They needed financial assistance. They didn't waste any time going right to the point, even trying to soften it by claiming that I could make it up to them by paying for my siblings' schooling, but that at first they were upset that I hadn't contacted them despite performing well. Their attempt to make it seem as though they were doing me a favor by allowing me to pay for the college education of 2 children I no longer knew astounded me. I told them right away that I wouldn't be doing that and that it was disrespectful of them to believe they could coerce me into doing so. I became irate and reminded them that they were the reason I had to work during my college years and pay for my own education. Because they wanted to save for their real children, who they believed deserved it more than I did, they had refused to provide me with financial support back then. I assured them that they had no right to expect anything from me now, particularly financial support, since I had never questioned their choice to put the twins first and had just left them alone. They actually no longer had the right to demand that I communicate with them. Instead of attempting to emotionally control me, I pointed out that they could now use the same money to pay for the twins' college bills because they had wished to conserve money and resources for the children who deserved it. I had nothing else to say, so I asked them to go. I was stupid to invite them inside my house in the first place, assuming they might have come to express regret for their treatment of me. They became irritated and attempted to place the blame elsewhere when I began to insist that they leave. They informed me that I wasn't innocent in this case. Their protection. They said I was over-enthusiastic, over-involved, and frequently irritable while we all lived together. I was only a teenager, trying to keep in touch with my family as they drifted away from me, so I couldn't believe that was a true issue they had with me. They then had the audacity to claim that I was no better than them since I had denied their request. They said I was forgetting all the years my mother had taken care of me and brought me up alone. They said that this was my opportunity to make it up to her and assist her, but I was being rude and unappreciative instead. Since I was a child at the time, I thought it was absurd that they would bring that up. Even if I had wanted to, I couldn't have decided not to rely on them. Furthermore, it wasn't like they were helping me. They pushed me out of the house and effectively forced me out as soon as they believed I was mature enough to manage things on my own. For the following 18 years, they refused to acknowledge my existence. I was still shocked that they had the gall to expect me to aid them now, as if I owed them something, even after everything that had happened. During the dispute, things became quite personal and ugly, and I finally threatened to call the police if they didn't leave my property. My mother reminded me of all the sacrifices she had made when I was younger, ostensibly because she wanted to be a good mother, before they finally departed after more arguments. She said that I had been ungrateful the one time she had expected me to sympathize with her predicament and allow her to put other people before myself. She now claimed that rather than the other way around, I was portraying her as the villain. Since then, this has been bothering me and I'm having trouble figuring out whether I'm to blame, whether I've been expecting too much from my mother, or whether she's simply deceiving me. I decided to post on Reddit to get some unbiased perspectives even though I'm quite sure I'm correct. AITA for not paying for my half-sibling's college tuition just because my stepdad and estranged mother are having financial difficulties. Edit. Even though my uncle had excellent intentions, I reminded him that what he did was wrong and unacceptable. His actions undoubtedly had a negative effect. I wouldn't be in this predicament if he hadn't shared my life with my mother and disclosed my contact details without my consent. He apologized excessively, stating that he was unaware of their financial difficulties and that he had no idea my mother would respond in this manner. He admitted that he had no business telling my mother about my life and that if we had wanted to get back together, we would have done so without his help. Since his heart was in the right place, I don't intend to cut him out of my life. I would have been much more angry if he had meant something different. He simply made an error. In addition, it was because of him that I was initially able to attend college. He was the only person who was prepared to assume the responsibility of co-signing my loan application. If you consider it, I might not be in this situation at all if it weren't for him. I made sure to let him know that what he did wasn't appropriate since I don't want to come across as unappreciative, but I'm also not a doormat. Whatever I did was fair enough, and I believe I found the ideal balance. We're doing great together, and I won't hold anything against him because I needed this resolution somehow. I also discussed my mom's recent struggles with my grandparents. They believe I'm correct and have promised to make an effort to persuade her to change her mind. I realized that they didn't want to lose touch with their other grandchildren, which is why they have remained in touch with my mom. They understand the struggles my mom's family is going through, but they don't think it's right or fair to put me through this. That's their position on the issue, and I believe it's reasonable enough. First update. My mother has taken it upon herself to remind me of all she did for me growing up ever since we last spoke, which was nearly 9 days ago. She probably sends me an email every other day to make me feel like I owe her something. It's not like she gave me a favor by raising me alone, and she was legally required to take care of me, so I don't really understand the point. She only reared me when it was convenient for her. She and her spouse decided to expel me as soon as I started to cause them trouble, citing the need to save money for the twins and their future. Now that we're in the future and the twins are adults, I believe they should rely on themselves rather than wasting time trying to manipulate and guilt-trip me. Although I had been ignoring her emails, I made the decision to reply a few days ago. I explained to her all I had written in my essay. She didn't take it well, as expected, and labeled me ungrateful once more. I just informed her that calling me names would not alter the truth and that I no longer wanted to have any contact with her because she had been a bad mother. I blocked her email account after that, but she made a new one to continue to annoy me. Since she never done the same for me, I blocked that one as well, and I'll keep doing so until she understands that I'm not here to mope about her. To be honest, I'm glad we're finally having this discussion because I think it will end quickly and I'll have the necessary closure. Only because I was still clinging to the hope that perhaps they had changed, that perhaps they were here to congratulate me and make amends, did I welcome them into my house and talk to them that day. However, speaking with them made me realize that they are just not the type of individuals who are able to experience regret, guilt, or shame. I've fully given up on ever making amends with them after it once again made me realize how self-centered and cunning they are. Second update. I believe that my mother's appearance at my place of employment earlier today was the most bizarre thing she has ever done. Fortunately, I wasn't working today, so she departed really fast and didn't succeed in her endeavor. I was feeling a little under the weather, so I decided to take the day off, and I'm so happy I did. She would have definitely thrown a fit or done anything to make me look foolish if I'd been present. When the receptionist called to inform me that my mom had arrived, wanting to see me and refusing to go despite being informed that I wasn't there, I learned the truth. When they put her on the phone with me, I firmly told her that I was at home, even though I was already rather anxious about what she might do. She was informed that if she attempted anything at my place of employment, I would sue her until she would be too ashamed to send her children to college. I did my best to sound threatening, so I believe it truly frightened her. She agreed to depart right away, provided I met her in person, so it must have worked. I reminded her that she couldn't afford a lawsuit at the moment and informed her that she wasn't in a position to be making demands. I also mentioned that my employer would not think twice about suing her if the situation worsened, which would be a very different scenario because they wouldn't be as forgiving as I'd been. She'd be better off just going out in silence. I didn't get any more calls or notifications regarding the event, so I guess she left after giving the phone back to the receptionist. I can't afford for this to happen again because that was undoubtedly a near call. I've made the decision to speak with a lawyer to find out what precautions I may take. She hasn't threatened me directly, so I'm not sure if this is enough to get a restraining order, but I still want to speak with the attorney to discuss my alternatives. I just have to hope that this experience was unpleasant enough for her to think about leaving me alone till then. Update 3. Since I'm very certain we now have grounds for a restraining order, I suppose I don't need to consider filing one. When my mother arrived at my place of employment last week, I was able to persuade her to leave. However, in light of this week's events, I believe that a restraining order against her needs to be issued for everyone. She was waiting outside my door when I got home from work a few days ago. I informed her right away that I didn't want to argue and that I would call the police if she didn't leave. She practically raced at me and threw me to the ground, sending my phone flying out of my hands as I was ready to dial. She cursed at me and blamed me for everything that had gone wrong in her life, while she attempted to beat me up. It took me a while to react since I was so taken aback by her insane conduct. However, because I consistently work out and am much younger than her, it was simple for me to overwhelm her when I did. Fortunately, all the shouting had alerted my neighbors to the problem and caused them to call the police. They even came to my aid and restrained my mother as we awaited the arrival of the cops. I made the decision to file charges when the police eventually arrived. She is currently in a lot of trouble. In addition, I've discussed this with my attorney and requested a restraining order against her. I've been informed that Harry has taken the children and moved in with his parents. I'm not sure if he intends to come back anytime soon. He apparently challenged her about her behavior after saving her and informed her that she couldn't continue acting in this manner. She also got into a fight with him, which seems to mean she's really lost it. I believe she finds it difficult to believe that I'm doing well in life, but in all honesty, she is to blame for her own issues. I will not be sorry for her. I'll have the restraining order in place soon, and since I'm making more money, I've already started thinking about moving into a larger home. Since now seems like the ideal moment, I'm going to start exploring my alternatives. Being linked to someone like that is embarrassing, so I sincerely hope my mother receives the support she needs and learns to behave normally. She has also been nasty to my grandparents, who have told me they no longer want to be around her. The only person she can blame for everyone avoiding her is herself. Anyway, I'm not worried about it anymore. Mom sold our dad's house to buy her new husband a boat. Now she's begging me for a place to stay after he left. Behind our backs, Mom sold our dad's house to purchase a yacht for her unemployed new husband, who later left her for someone else. She spent all the money and now begs to live with me. If that's the right description in this context, my 50F mother has had a pretty interesting life. My grandparents felt that women should take care of the home and family, so it was okay that she was never a good student. She still adheres to the same values that she was raised with. At the age of 20, 2 years after graduating from school, she married my dad. She gave birth to my older sister Jasmine, now 29F, when I was 21, and to me Bianca, now 27F, 2 years later. Dad was always closer to my sister and me. He was quite supportive, although he didn't agree with Mom. He made it a point to always be there, enrolled us in a number of extracurricular activities, and pushed us to succeed academically. I enjoyed drawing, so Dad surrounded me with art tools. Dad also made sure my sister never missed a day of soccer practice since he saw her potential there. My mother was tremendously annoyed by the fact that he was constantly there for us. She disapproved of our pastimes. She disliked that we were intellectually minded, and as a result of our nature, and Dad's encouragement, she actually lost a lot of respect in her family. We were disliked by my maternal grandparents in particular. When Dad died when I was 11, everything changed. He died a few days after being hospitalized following an automobile accident. My mother suffered a severe financial and emotional setback as a result, and naturally, so did the rest of us. We were done financially, but I don't want to discuss the mental turmoil we endured since it is irrelevant. We didn't have enough insurance to pay for the thousands of dollars Dad's hospital stay had cost. My mother had no savings of her own because she was unemployed, and the majority of his savings were used to cover the bills. I recall that we had to sell a lot of our belongings a few weeks following his passing. My sister stopped attending soccer practice, I sold my painting supplies, and we were assigned housework. I detested every aspect of my life's transformation, but since I was still reliant on my mother, there was nothing I could do about it. My paternal grandparents helped out at that point. They lived 3 states away, so we didn't see each other very often, so we had never been close, but they were always kind to me when I did see them. My grandfather was startled to learn that Mom had sold my belongings to make ends meet when he came to see us. He offered to pay for our interests and pastimes, but my mother rejected the idea, claiming she needed the money to support us rather than to finance our useless interests. She advised him to send money for power or groceries if he so desired. My grandfather became irritated and offered to cover the additional expenses if she worked to earn a living. She was in charge of making sure we survived, and he would only assist if she did her job. That's what happened when my mother said no. My mother was still receiving donations from family members and hadn't begun working at that time. Additionally, we had a lot of these handouts in some months and almost nothing in others. Our expenses were primarily covered by her parents. Because she sincerely believed that it was a man's job to provide, she flatly refused to find a job, claiming that the males in her family had a responsibility to support her. For several months, this continued, and her parents felt sorry for her and us and they took care of us. However, that money suddenly stopped being received on a regular basis. Due to Mom's extreme financial hardship, Jasmine and I had to work to supplement our income. We could be seen at a neighbor's house every weekend, weeding their garden, strolling their dog, etc. Even though it was difficult, Mom didn't start working. When her parents finally had enough, they sat her down to have a conversation. They informed her that they could no longer provide for her and us since they had made plans for how they would spend their retirement years and could no longer afford to care for us. Mom was really surprised by this since she had thought that because Dad had passed away, her father should be responsible for looking after us because men provide. Given how my grandparents had brought her up, it was difficult to dispute with such reasoning. However, they were now shifting their position. According to them, the husband's role was to support his wife, and if he passed away, the wife would have to take care of the children. My mom and her sister had been informed that all of their possessions would pass to their brother, so they were effectively cutting her off. There was a lot of crying and name-calling during the confrontation, but my grandparents refused to back down. My mother sought assistance from Auntie Janice, her sister. Now, Auntie Janice loved us and was a wonderful woman. Although they didn't spend much time with us, her husband, a surgeon, was willing to assist. However, the amount of money we received from them was insufficient to sustain a family of 3. Mom then returned to my paternal grandparents. In exchange for my mom working, my grandfather was more than happy to assist. We couldn't have survived without their assistance, so she was forced to accept. Our lives had returned to normal after she secured a well-paying housekeeping position at a neighboring hotel. We were able to return to a comfortable lifestyle with the assistance of our grandfather and uncle. For the next 2 years, until I was 14 and my sister was 16, this arrangement persisted. Our mother introduced us to Dan at that point. Her new lover, Dan, was interested in marrying her. After just one glance at him, Jasmine and I felt repulsed. I'm not kidding when I say that he smelt and looked like a pig. It seemed like he hadn't taken a bath since high school. He had a lost expression on his face and smelled like cigarettes, as though he was unable to hear anything that was said to him. Needless to say, Jasmine and I harbored a deep hatred for him in addition to our disapproval. Regretfully, Mom professed to be deeply in love with him. Jasmine and I were pledged to silence, and they were married in a hush-hush ceremony. We had to keep Mom's second marriage a secret from Dad's side of the family. She was concerned that our grandparents would discontinue the monthly payments if they learned, and because it was a sizable sum, we truly couldn't have survived without it. Jasmine and I therefore said nothing. When Mom married Dan, I'm not sure what was going through her mind, but I believe she believed that if she married and had a guy in her life, she wouldn't have to work any longer and he would take care of everything. She quit her work and returned home a week after they were married, so I'm sure she assumed that Dan's unemployment was the issue. It was a persistent one. He was only able to work for 2 months at a time, after which he would spend his time playing video games at home and only hunt for a new job when he became tired of them. This man didn't intend to support any of us, so all of Mom's dreams came crashing down. In order to get some spending money, Jasmine and I resumed working odd jobs for people. Therefore, my mother's sister's husband or my father's parents provided the majority of the family's income. To put it mildly, it was dysfunctional, and Jasmine and I were eager to go. We concentrated on school and our part-time jobs, avoiding contact with Mom and Dan. For the following 4 years, until I departed for college and stopped talking to Mom, this was the setup. Mom and Dan were having issues by the time I was about to leave. To be honest, neither my sister nor I were surprised to learn that Dan was not just unemployed but also a chronic cheater. Things were messy, but Mom continued ignoring them or forgiving him. After I started college, I stopped talking to my mother. My mother somehow always knew what was happening in my life since I kept in touch with my grandparents, aunt and uncle. I found a respectable career after graduating from college at the age of 23. The issue was that my promotions and raises were little because I graduated just before COVID. Life kind of stopped for a while because I was unable to save as much as I had hoped. The wonderful grandpa offered me some assistance, but I declined because I didn't want to burden him. Fortunately, I didn't lose my job, so I shouldn't be too upset. I received a significant pay increase and a promotion at work a few months ago. Since I had also saved money over the COVID years by living as cheaply as possible, this put me in a good position to purchase a modest home. Despite my goal of owning a home by the age of 25, I was content with the 2-year wait. I'm not sure how, but my mother discovered that I had purchased a home. She called me and said she had not seen her baby in a long time and wanted to meet up. Since I hadn't seen her since my last semester of college, I sensed something wasn't right. After that, neither she nor I had ever volunteered to meet. I promised to get back to her and let her know when I had some spare time. I had no intention of ever getting back to her. She went on to say that I had to notify her right away since it was essential. I excused myself and hung up the phone since I knew she was asking for something. She phoned me again 2 days later and said she needed my assistance since she was in a bit of a mess. She stated she had heard I had purchased a home and wanted me to allow her and Dan to move in before I could even consent. In essence, they wanted to live with me in my home. Her arrogance made me chuckle uncontrollably. I expressed to her my surprise that Dan was still alive and my wish that she had moved on from him. I informed her that, contrary to her assumption, I did not own a house. Rather, it was an apartment with a balcony, and the three of us could not possibly fit there. I hoped the size and space argument would be sufficient to dissuade her because I didn't want to explicitly tell her that I didn't want her there. I had been too optimistic though. She then informed me that I could leave the flat as it was only one bedroom, allowing her and Dan to move in together. I informed her that was not possible because I had put in a lot of effort to have someone else reside in my home. I also needed to pay off my mortgage. She lost it when I told her that I would rent her the going rate. She began yelling at me, claiming that she hadn't brought up her daughters to be such leeches, and that she couldn't believe I was renting from my own mother. She could go somewhere else to beg for crumbs, I told her, and I didn't have time for her or her yelling. I blocked her after hanging up. Jasmine told me she hadn't received a comparable call from Mom when I contacted her. A month has passed since their last conversation, during which Mom inquired about her residence. Jasmine informed her that she and her partner had moved in together and were saving money for a home. Why Mom needed a place to stay in the first place was beyond me. Dan had moved in with us in our dad's old house, where we grew up, and she still owned it. I didn't understand why she felt the need to relocate so quickly. To inquire about the residence, I gave my paternal grandparents a call. I finally realized what was actually happening at that point. My grandfather's name was on the house where we were raised. When my grandparents died, it was technically meant to go to Dad. It was agreed that my father and his brother, our Uncle Liam, would each receive a house that belonged to my grandfather, allowing them to live there without paying rent. This was intended to provide them with a solid foundation in life and enable them to make real estate investments for their kids. Therefore, the deed to the house we grew up in was legally in my grandfather's name rather than my father's. My grandma insisted that Grandpa keep the house in his name after Dad passed away so that Jasmine and I could inherit it as adults. But Grandpa didn't want to cause Mom any more problems because she was unemployed. I believe he also felt sorry for her, which is why he gave my mother ownership of the house when she requested him to. This was done with the idea that the house would be delivered to us when Jasmine was 27 and I turned 25. I now think this is the reason Mom warned us not to bring up the fact that she had married Dan. But soon, word spread. Grandpa claims that when they learned that she had remarried, they were angry because she had concealed it from them. At that point, they sought to transfer the house's ownership as quickly as possible. They insisted on finishing the papers to ensure that Dan and Mom couldn't do anything with the house because Jasmine was an adult and I was almost one. However, Mom cleverly informed them that Dan had moved on to someone else a few weeks after they had made their plans known. Her uncontrollable tears naturally caused my grandparents to give up on pursuing the ownership issue. They eventually forgot about it, and it became less important. Since then, they had only sometimes communicated with her, and that was the last time they discussed the house with her. I informed Grandpa that Mom had called to express her desire to move in with Dan at my place. What had happened to Dad's house, if such were the case? Since he was unaware that she had reconciled with Dan or that she was relocating, he indicated he would make an effort to learn more. This makes me uneasy, and I have a hunch that more drama will soon break out. Edit. To all of the commenters, I'm shocked that I was unaware of such significant information about my mother's life. This is what happens when you don't communicate with her. I don't regret my decision to shut her out of my life. I left the house and her life as soon as I reached 18, and ever since, I've been quite formal with her. I was unaware that Dan had left her and that he would return because of this. Jasmine and I were children, which is why we were unaware of the mansion. Both our grandparents and our mother were supposed to keep us safe. For this reason, the subject of real estate or home ownership was never discussed. We were minors at the time, and Grandpa and Grandma were dealing with our mother, who was meant to look after us, not defraud us, so they never considered talking to us about it. Jasmine and I are currently unaware of what transpired with Dad's house, but we plan to ask Mom and, if necessary, plan an intervention. I'll keep you all informed. Update 1. It's not good. Jasmine, her boyfriend, my grandparents and I made the decision to meet with Mom 2 weeks after my initial post in an attempt to find out what was going on. She was taken aback when we arrived because we had not informed her of our arrival. The finest aspect. A young couple opened the door when we arrived at our house, which was Dad's house and the place we grew up in. They claimed to be the property's owners, but at first we assumed they were Dan's family or perhaps Mom's acquaintances. They were telling the truth, but I didn't trust them, so I wanted to laugh. Without telling Jasmine or me or obtaining my grandparents' approval, Mom had sold the house. It's also interesting to note that the sale took place more than 6 months ago. There is nothing we can do now because she secretly sold our house 6 months ago. Regretfully, she was the legitimate owner of the house and had the right to sell it because my grandparents never finished the paperwork and ownership transfer. Everyone is shocked by this, and we all feel deceived and repulsed. We made an effort to locate her residence. It was in a 1-bedroom apartment in a seedy part of downtown, surrounded by junkies. I wasn't shocked to see that this was Dan's apartment because he seemed to be a junkie himself. Mom went white as a ghost when she saw us all standing together. We refused to let her shut the door as she attempted to do so. Fortunately, Jasmine's boyfriend, who is 6'4" and somewhat scary, was with us. Dan was sitting on the couch, smoking a cigarette and wearing a disoriented expression as we pushed our way inside. Mom gave us a tense greeting, but we immediately attacked. I informed her that Mom had sold Dad's house without telling Jasmine, me, or our grandparents, and that I knew it was meant for us. She started crying and claimed that Dan wouldn't have returned if she hadn't done it. She basically broke down in tears as she related how Dan had abandoned her twice for 2 separate women. Grandpa had truly departed when Mom told him Dan had left during their talk about the house. For him to return, she had to beg and plead. After being evicted from his new girlfriend's home, he eventually came back. Then, a year later, Mom discovered that he was having an affair with a girl who was just barely out of her teens. I simply stared at her as if she were crazy. When he was so troublesome and not supporting her in any manner, I questioned why she hadn't left him. I didn't have the patience to feel sorry for her, and she didn't respond to that. My grandmother was enraged. She yelled at her mother, telling her that she didn't want to hear justifications for her extreme failure. The house Jasmine and I were meant to live in was all that mattered to her. According to Mom, Dan wanted to purchase a yacht, so she sold the house. I don't know much about boats, but I do know that this man decided he wanted a boat after working as a coast guard at a beach a few miles away for a few months. If Mom didn't assist him in purchasing one, he threatened to abandon her once more. Thus, my mother, the world's greatest genius, sold her home and spent a portion of the proceeds to purchase a boat for this fool. She handed him the remaining funds rather than keeping them for herself. He used every last cent of it. He had to sell the yacht and purchase the apartment they were residing in when they had nothing left. And you know what? They detested it. Mom wanted to ask if I could allow her and Dan to remain with me because of this. When her story was over, she conceded defeatingly that she was certain I would no longer allow her to remain with me. Jasmine attacked her before I could respond, and wow, she was vicious. She enumerated the ways in which Mom had failed Dad as a wife and us as a mother. In order to support her uncaring husband, she had taken away the one thing that would have allowed us to remain connected to our father. She informed Mom that she would never hear from her again and that she was dead to her. I agreed with Jasmine, but I was still in shock and couldn't say much. I didn't want to do anything with my mom. Mom broke down in tears and said that she didn't deserve to be treated this way. We informed her that she did. Most significantly, she had deprived us of a link to our father and our early years. She had also stolen from our grandparents. We had no intention of ever forgiving her. We went out. She has since attempted to contact our grandparents and us, but none of us are able to get through to her. The money and property are permanently gone, and there is nothing we can do about the house. Although I realize it's a pipe dream and not really realistic. I'm thinking about accumulating money and purchasing it if it ever goes up for sale again, since I don't want to lose that aspect of my youth. My grandparents are devastated and incensed, but they are unable to help. We keep telling Grandpa that he couldn't have known she would do this, but he still curses himself for putting his trust in her. It's just a depressing situation, and we all feel powerless. Update 2. Dan departed from Mom once more. It may sound harsh, but I adore every aspect of it. Jasmine and I have not replied to her apparent attempts to contact us using new numbers and other means. She made an effort to include Aunt Janice. Last week, she called and asked me to speak with Mom. I told her everything and told her not to get involved. She was appalled as she was unaware that we were to inherit the house. She blocked her after apologizing for attempting to support Mom. The only information I received from Mom came from Auntie Janice, who informed me that Dan had abandoned her. Mom has nowhere to go and is now homeless. At first, Auntie Janice and her husband were open to taking her home, but they firmly objected after learning what Mom had done to us. Mom sent me an email yesterday. She essentially stated that she had nowhere to go, was homeless, and was down and out. She requested permission to live with me while she sought employment. She won't seek work, and if I take her in, she won't ever leave, so I know it's a lie. I feel awful about letting her live on the streets, but I also don't want her here, which is why I haven't replied yet. There just isn't anyone who would be willing to assist her. Even though I know she is solely to blame and that she caused this, I still feel bad for her. I know she will wreck my life if I give in, so I'm hoping I don't. Update 3. Jasmine said she received something similar after I told her about Mom's email. She acknowledged that she was secretly tempted to assist her but had not replied either. Since we both know Mom's personality, Jasmine informed me she would back my choice but that I give it careful thought. She will take over and ruin any tranquility I may have if I allow her inside. Thankfully, after a lengthy conversation, Jasmine made sense to me. In the end, I answered Mom. I sent her a lengthy email informing her that I would never, ever assist her. I vented all of my feelings, including disdain, hatred, wrath, and betrayal. I don't know if she has replied because I flagged her email as spam. I sent her the contact information for a few women's shelters that might be able to assist her, but that's all I'll do. She no longer deserves our assistance because she has been financially and emotionally irresponsible throughout our lives. I have requested Auntie Janice to keep me out of her affairs because I have no idea what she will do. I don't require her life updates. She was the worst part of my childhood and is no longer my mother. I'm prepared to let her go. My stepbrother bullied me for years. I recorded him and got him expelled. Now my family wants me to say the video was fake to save his future. For the past year, my stepbrother Jonathan, 17M, has been tormenting me at school, and yesterday it just blew up. Because of how messed up this issue is, let me give you some history before I tell you what happened. 3 years ago, at her company's annual dinner, my mom met Jonathan's father, Harris, 45M. Mom had been parenting me alone since my dad died in a vehicle accident when I was 5 years old. Before she met Harris, she had a few dates but nothing committed. He seemed to genuinely care about her and was pleasant and successful. Before getting married, they dated for around a year. About 6 months into their relationship, Harris organized a dinner where I first met Jonathan. At first, Jonathan appeared to be fine, quiet but courteous. After supper, we even played video games together, and I recall thinking that maybe having a sibling wouldn't be that horrible. Being an only child has always left me feeling lonely at times, to be honest. After the wedding and when we all moved in together, everything was different. The initial weeks were uncomfortable but doable. Then, when our parents weren't present, Jonathan began to say these insignificant things. He would remark things like that I was probably in dire need of a father figure or that his dad was essentially my mom's meal ticket, which is untrue. My mom is a wealthy marketing executive. My grandma gave me a number of photo albums, and I have wonderful recollections of my dad. I initially tried to ignore it, assuming he was simply getting used to the new circumstances. However, the remarks continued to deteriorate. He would ridicule me for keeping my dad's photos in my room, telling me that I should move on since his dad was now my father. He would tell me that I was fortunate that they even allowed me to live in their house because, in reality, Harris had purchased it. They really sold both of their previous homes to buy it jointly. Mom would respond that I was being overly sensitive and that Jonathan was only attempting to get used to having a new family member when I tried to bring this up to her. Jonathan's transfer to my school at the start of this school year was the beginning of the real horror. Our parents believed that having us attend the same school would promote brotherly bonding. Jonathan plays football, has a large circle of friends, and essentially controls the social scene, making him the quintessential popular kid. I have a tiny circle of pals who share my hobbies, and I'm more interested in academics and computer programming. At school, Jonathan began spreading all these tales about me. He told people that I'm jealous of him because he has a real father, that I frantically attempt to win his dad's approval, I really avoid Harris out of respect for my dad's memories, and that I cry myself to sleep wishing for my dead dad. I don't. Because they had heard about my emotional issues, even strangers would approach me and ask if I needed an embrace. It got so awful. Physically, it began modestly. In the corridors, he would run into me and say it was an accident. With a phony voice that made his pals laugh, he would knock down my books and say sorry. However, things worsened. In the cafeteria, he once accidentally poured his energy drink all over my laptop. All of my programming efforts were stored on that laptop, and although I was able to preserve the hard drive, the laptop itself was destroyed. Jonathan said it was just an accident and offered to let me use his old laptop when I told Mom and Harris. They told me I was exaggerating the situation because they thought he was right. Even Mom's sister, Aunt Sarah, who was formerly quite close to me and always supported me, began to advise me to make a greater effort to connect with Jonathan. He's just being a typical teenage boy, and you're too sensitive, Just like your father was, she would add. My dad was always my hero, so having her point the finger at me in that final remark was incredibly hurtful. Things dramatically worsened around a month ago. After gym class, Jonathan and his pals cornered me in the boys' locker room. They were pushing me around, removing my glasses, and making fun of the fact that I couldn't even fight back like a real man, all without actually striking me. I decided I had had enough at that point. When Jonathan was around, I began surreptitiously recording everything on my phone. I was desperate, even though I realized it might not be the correct thing to do. When I told them what was going on, they didn't believe me. I got just what I needed 2 weeks ago. Tommy, a freshman, was being harassed by Jonathan and his pals. Tommy is quite bashful and little for his age. He was trying to jump and catch his bag as they threw it over his head in a game of keep away. They referred to him by derogatory terms, saying things like, "What's wrong, short stack? Unable to get there?" I took notes on everything. Jonathan went too far though. Jonathan became enraged and gave Tommy a strong shove when he eventually succeeded in grabbing his luggage. Tommy's nose got bloody after he collapsed and struck his face against a locker. I went directly to the principal with the video. Despite their generally lax enforcement of our school's zero-tolerance policy for bullying, they were unable to ignore it when there was video proof of actual physical attack. By the end of the day, Jonathan was formally discharged from school when they phoned Harris to come get him. Everything blew up when we got home that afternoon. Jonathan sobbed to his father about how his life had been ruined, how he would never be able to attend a reputable university, and how this would ruin his chances of receiving a football scholarship. Harris was enraged with me, shouting that I had betrayed family, and that I was only envious of Jonathan's accomplishments. The worst part, though? My mother sided with them. In fact, she advised me to visit them first rather than the principal first. She claimed that by going behind their backs, I had betrayed my family and that in order to get Jonathan back into school, I had to admit to the principal that I had altered the tape or something. Mom began to cry when I refused and tried to tell them about all the bullying I had experienced, claiming that I was ending her marriage and that I should put family first. Then, 4 months before I turned 18, Harris threatened to throw me out. I contacted my grandma, Dad's mother, because I could take it no more. I've been staying with her ever since she came to get me that evening. My mother is constantly texting and calling, switching between threatening to ruin my future and guilt-tripping me over destroying our family. While some of my students are accusing me of being a snitch, others who have also been harassed by Jonathan are expressing gratitude to me. I know what I did was right, therefore I don't regret anything, but now everything is in such disarray. The worst thing is that my mother, who has always encouraged me to confront bullies, is now telling me that I should have remained silent. Update 1. I want to start by expressing my gratitude to everyone who left a remark on my previous post. All of the encouragement has been so overwhelming that I needed some time to take it all in before updating. A lot has transpired during the last 2 weeks, and they have been intense. My mom unexpectedly showed up at my grandmother's place the day after I posted. Despite her displeasure, my grandmother allowed her entry. Mom appeared awful, as if she hadn't had any sleep in days. When she first saw me, she broke down in tears and said she wanted to make amends because she had failed me as a mother. I felt sorry for her for a second. She then mentioned Jonathan. She said that although she could understand why I did what I did, I had to realize that Jonathan's entire future was on the line. It seems that 3 other schools in our district attempted to enroll him after he was dismissed from our school, but all of them turned him away due to the bullying event. I only showed the principal the video, but it somehow got out there, and suddenly Jonathan was being called a violent bully. Jonathan was reportedly despondent, seldom eating, and always talking about how his life was over, according to Mom. She informed me that he might now be turned down by colleges after losing his shot at a football scholarship. She repeatedly reached for my hand during our conversation, but I resisted. She was still attempting to make me feel bad about defending myself, and I couldn't believe it. After sitting silently in her armchair through all of this, my grandma eventually said something. She revealed to me something I was unaware of. My dad had experienced terrible bullying during his high school years. He seemed to be quite similar to me at my age, quiet, interested in school, and a simple target for bullies. When the bullies pushed him down a flight of stairs one day, it got so terrible that he ended up in the hospital with a fractured arm. He was altered by that experience. After that, according to my grandma, he was resolved to never allow bullies to get away with harming people. He always taught me to advocate for others and myself because of this. She claimed that he would have been pleased with the actions I took to safeguard Tommy, the freshman, as well as myself. My mother dropped the true bombshell as I was still processing this new information about my dad. She sobbed as she disclosed that Harris had threatened to file for divorce if she didn't accept responsibility for the video's editing and write a statement claiming that I had fabricated everything to get Jonathan back into school. She pleaded with me to help her keep her marriage together, stating that she couldn't endure another broken relationship. My own mother was pleading with me to lie and accept responsibility for everything in order to keep her husband from abandoning her, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My grandmother must have noticed my surprise because she told my mom to go right away. She claimed that a mother didn't deserve to be called a mother at all if she asked her child to take responsibility for their own mistreatment. My grandma handed me a collection of letters my dad had written to me before he passed away after Mom left. She believed I needed them immediately, even though they were meant to be presented to me when I turned 18. He expressed his desire for me to always stand up for what's right, even when everyone else was against me, in one of them, which was written just 1 week prior to his accident. He wrote that being brave is about doing the right thing in the face of fear, not about never being afraid. In the meantime, education has become more difficult. Through the use of photoshopped images of me with derogatory captions and the dissemination of false information that I'm mentally ill and made things up for attention, Jonathan's friends have been harassing me online. However, an unforeseen event occurred. The freshman Jonathan had harassed, Tommy, shared his own experience. Tommy informed the principal of further instances in which he had been harassed by Jonathan. Then other children began to come forward, like dominoes falling. Some even have recordings of themselves. One female had recorded being harassed about her weight by Jonathan and his friends for weeks. Screenshots of Jonathan harassing him and threatening to tell everyone were in the possession of another man. Yesterday, I was called into the school counselor's office. A big folder containing complaints about Jonathan from the previous year that had been misplaced or disregarded was presented to me by her. She asked whether I would be willing to assist in establishing an anti-bullying committee at the school and expressed regret for not acting sooner. She claimed that by confronting Jonathan, I had inspired other kids to speak up as well. I'm a cunning kid who set Jonathan up because I was envious of him, Harris has been telling everyone who will listen. He is being believed by a number of family members, including my Aunt Sarah. She gave me a lengthy lecture over the phone yesterday, expressing her disappointment that I had ruined a young man's future over teenage drama. I should have handled it within the family instead of embarrassing everyone by going to the principal, she remarked, echoing Mom's statement. I continue to reside at my grandmother's home. Since I'll be 18 in 4 months anyhow, she's actually assisting me with researching legal emancipation. I have a strong case, especially considering the circumstances, according to the attorney we spoke with. I constantly get these lengthy, tearful letters from my mom saying that I'm tearing the family apart, and that I'll regret it when I'm older. I no longer reply to them. It's unbelievable to me that she would put her marriage before her own son. I'm attempting to concentrate on my studies and maintain my marks at the moment. Despite everything, my grandmother has been incredible. She even made me a little study space in her guest room, just as I had at home. Reading my dad's letters is helpful on days that are more difficult than others. It is as though he anticipated my need for his counsel years later. I'm just trying to get through each day right now, but I'll update again if something important occurs. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support. Knowing that I'm not alone in advocating for myself is a huge comfort. Update 2. Things have taken a surprising turn, and I'm still figuring out what happened. Karen, Jonathan's birth mother, sent me a Facebook message last week, which surprised me. She claimed that one of Harris's relatives had told her about what had occurred and that she wanted to meet with him to discuss it. I was somewhat apprehensive at first. I was unsure of her motivation because Harris had consistently portrayed her as an unstable individual who had deserted Jonathan. However, my grandma consented to accompany me, so last Saturday we met Karen at a coffee shop close to her home. Everything I believed to be true about the scenario was totally altered by what she told us. It turns out that Jonathan had previously engaged in severe bullying. Prior to my mom and Harris's marriage, he had received 3 suspensions from his former school for harassing other pupils. The most recent instance was very awful. As a prank, he and his friends had trapped a child in the gym storage room for several hours. Following that episode, Karen had attempted to get Jonathan into therapy. In order to address Jonathan's violent conduct, she showed us past emails she had exchanged with Jonathan's school counselor, who strongly suggested a psychological assessment and treatment. Harris, however, had objected, claiming that Karen was attempting to portray their kid as weak and damaged. When she gave us the records from their custody dispute, it was the true stunner. Harris had obtained full custody because he had superior counsel and persuaded the court that Karen was trying to create problems where there weren't any by insisting on therapy, not because he was the better parent. Not only did he transfer Jonathan to my school because of the marriage, but his previous school had threatened to expel him if he committed another infraction. As she was telling us all of this, Karen started crying. She claimed that although she had made an effort to remain involved in Jonathan's life, Harris had threatened to take legal action against her if she attempted to get in touch with his school or intervene. She kept apologizing to me for not speaking up sooner, claiming that she was too scared of Harris to take any action. Harris had done this previously, which explains a lot of why he was so fast to threaten divorce if I didn't accept responsibility. Instead of genuinely assisting Jonathan in resolving his problems, he is more concerned with maintaining his reputation. He has been repeating this cycle for years. Last night, I presented my mother with all of this material. Karen had provided us with copies of everything, including the court records, emails, and school reports, but I wasn't sure if she would believe it. I saw genuine understanding appear on Mom's face for the first time since this whole thing began when she read it all. At last, she broke down and acknowledged that she had been seeing Jonathan's conduct even prior to the school event, but she had been too scared of losing Harris to recognize it. She told me how some parents had stopped allowing their children to attend study groups at our house, how she had heard Jonathan being mean to other children when he believed no adults were around, and how she had noticed my withdrawal and anxiety but had told herself it was just teenage stuff. Mom moved out of Harris's house today. Yes, the same Aunt Sarah who chastised me is the one she's staying with. After seeing the proof, she has entirely altered her mind. Mom says she can't stay with someone who would protect a bully at the expense of other children, even if that child is his, and she has already filed for divorce, but not because of Harris's ultimatum. In order to get the custody agreement examined, Karen is collaborating with her attorneys. She has already discussed Jonathan's background and needs with counselors at a school in her state and wants to get him into the therapy he ought to have received years ago. Harris is enraged that all of this has come to light. The most unexpected aspect? Our principal has been contacted by Jonathan's former school. It appears that they are looking into the handling of Jonathan's bullying accusations and the reasons behind the loss or disregard of reports of his actions. Although it hasn't been confirmed yet, there are hints that Harris may have been involved. All of this is still registering in my mind. It's somewhat comforting to know that I wasn't insane and that Jonathan had a lengthy past that I was unaware of. However, it's disheartening to consider that perhaps none of this would have occurred if Jonathan had received assistance years prior, when Karen first became aware of the issues. My mother is always complaining that she should have done a better job of protecting me. Even if there is still too much hurt between us, at least she now realizes how horrible what she wanted me to do was. In order to understand why she was so willing to overlook the warning flags, she is discussing seeking therapy for herself. I'll give you another update if anything significant occurs, but for now, I'm just trying to concentrate on having a successful end to the school year. According to my grandma, I should be proud of myself for not only confronting Jonathan but also for being the one to end the years-long cycle of silence that had been shielding him. Update 3. 3 months have passed since my previous report, and things have finally begun to return to normal. I thought I should give you all a final update because a lot has changed. About a month ago, once my mom acquired her own house, I moved back in with her. Despite being smaller than our previous home, the flat nevertheless feels more like home. She continues to apologize nearly daily, and even though I've forgiven her, our relationship has changed. We both seem cautious now, as if we're worried about saying the wrong thing. Surprisingly, I chose to start family counseling 2 weeks ago. The counselor is assisting us in improving our communication and re-establishing mutual trust. There were some unsettling findings from the examination at Jonathan's previous school. It appears that Harris had been contributing regularly to the school's athletic department, which could account for the disappearance of numerous complaints regarding Jonathan. A thorough investigation is underway by the school board, and a number of administrators have been placed on leave. Last month, Jonathan relocated to his mother's state and is now enrolled in a new school that focuses on behaviorally challenged adolescents. I've heard that he's doing better now that Karen has him in rigorous therapy. He apologized for everything in a lengthy Facebook message that I received. He wrote about how therapy is helping him deal with his anger management difficulties and how he's finally realizing why he acted the way he did. I haven't replied yet. Perhaps I will, but right now I'm not prepared. The school's anti-bullying committee has flourished. The school administration is now taking bullying concerns much more seriously after we assisted a number of students in coming forward with their stories. Actually, I sit on the committee with Tommy, the freshman whom Jonathan harassed. He has grown to be the kind of brother I had thought Jonathan would be, like a little brother to me. The remaining letters from my dad were given to me by my grandma, and reading them has been both devastating and therapeutic. In one of them, he expresses his desire that I will become a person who defends others, and it seems as though he is still mentoring me despite the passage of time. Last week, my mom's divorce was finalized. Harris attempted to argue against it, but he immediately changed his mind once mom's attorney presented the information regarding Jonathan's history and Harris's role in concealing it. Mom is also receiving therapy to help her understand why she was so ready to overlook Jonathan's bullying warning signs. She claims that she lost sight of what was truly important, being a good mother, because she was so terrified of being alone once more when Dad passed away. The most surprising thing happened last week. I received a letter from Karen. She expressed her gratitude to me for being the first to reveal Jonathan's situation. She claimed that after years of feeling bad about not being able to support her son, she has found peace in witnessing him finally receive the assistance he requires. As a thank you, she also wrote me a check for my education fund, which I was able to return with the assistance of my grandma. Accepting it didn't seem right. Next month, I will graduate and move to another state for college. My dad left some money for my schooling, and my grandmother is assisting me with the money now that I've been accepted into a reputable computer science program. To have a new beginning ahead of me feels nice. Although fewer people now believe Harris, he continually disparages me to everyone who will listen. I've received apologies from some family members who initially supported him, such as Aunt Sarah, who now gives me cookies every weekend and never stops telling me how proud my dad would be. I've learned a lot about sticking up for what's right, even when it's difficult, from this entire process. I've discovered that you should continue to protect yourself even if the individuals who are supposed to do so fail you. I'm grateful for everyone who supported me, especially my grandma, who taught me what true family support looks like. I'm no longer furious.